The College Baseball Experience SEC Conference Preview for 2025 on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up, and when you do, sign up with the promo code TCESGPN. You get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Once again, that's Underdog Fantasy, promo code TCESGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Yes, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. And remember, as always, folks, to let it ride.
Hey, what's up, you degenerate gamblers? This is Bill Burr, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride, baby.
Yes. Woo! Welcome to the College Baseball Experience SEC Conference Preview for 2025. YouTube.com/the College Experience. Get on over there, hit that like and subscribe button, because we are talking about, you might not be able to say it in football anymore. That's what they say, right? But for sure in baseball, the premier conference in the college baseball world, the SEC conference. Look, there's new additions. We're going to talk all about them. If you're wondering, and we're going to break down every single team. And if you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, my name is Colby Swing of Database Dad, a.k.a. Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
Nobody knows nothing. Somebody knows. Double the price. But no one touches Dundee.
I love this. We are less than, what? Let me see if I can quickly do my math.
22 days.
Okay. There we go. I would have said like 29 or something. I don't know. Valentine's Day. We are breaking hearts with the college baseball world. Opening day. Right around the corner. I am joined by my co-host. He is the man, the real guy doing this on the college baseball show over the years. I'm just here for just to talk to him and learn and try to bet on what he's advising me to do here. But he's also the man on the boards on the college basketball and football experience behind the scenes. Give it up for the great Noah Bieniek. How you doing, brother?
How's it going, Colby? Can't wait for this episode. Been prepping all off season, I feel like, for this one. And new additions to the SEC, new additions to the TCE team here with the third man in the booth.
Yes, and Bieniek, would you before I introduce third man in the booth, I mean, how big of a gap is it, the SEC and the rest of the conferences?
I feel like it's getting smaller when you're comparing it to the ACC, but we'll talk about the two Big 12 teams that we added. You just don't get the weekends off that I feel like you get with the Big 12. And also, when we were previewing the ACC, who I think is the clear number 2, some of those teams don't have one arm like that. You're like, okay, we could bank on this guy going out there and dealing. Whereas a lot of these SEC teams have 2. And I think that's still the gap that the ACC needs to close if they want to compete with the SEC. You also need to get some national championships, as I think Virginia in 2015 is the only ACC championship since like the 1960s for the ACC, and the SEC has been dominating on that front. I think they've had just every year it's been a new team, not even like repeat champions within the last 9-year sample size for the SEC. They've kind of ran the show lately.
Wow, drop it knowledge. It's been a while there. Besides the UVA run, we are also joined by third man in the booth. This guy, you know, he's a betting analyst at NBC Sports, former betting analyst at NBC Sports. Also check out the Breaking Bet podcast. Give it up for the great Johnny V. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, guys. You know, last week was a blast talking the ACC. I think if there was no desire to get off the air, we could have talked about the ACC all night. But let me tell you, I've been twiddling my thumbs, idling away the hours for not only the show and the sports be back, but the SEC preview. That's something special. And you know what's so crazy about this is, like, college football for so long, it was the SEC territory. And now at the college football playoff, we've seen the SEC in the sport take a step back, and people are always like, oh, you know, SEC football, yeah, it's still great. They got grown men playing the sport down there. But these people don't understand. The SEC is a baseball conference. That is the conference that reigns supreme in not only the sport of baseball, but all of college sports. SEC preview tonight, boys.
Yeah, and I'd be curious. Let's just jump right in there. But I was wondering what you thought the gap was between them and you know, maybe the ACC or just the rest of college baseball.
You know, I think Noah said it. I think he hit the nail on the head. You know, the SEC is the best. It's great. And now with the new additions, I mean, I have some thoughts on Texas and Oklahoma coming over. But talent-wise, I definitely think it's better. But the ACC is so good, man. It's not as big of a gap as you would think, but it's definitely a gap that is big enough. And of course, pitching is what rules in college baseball. And while there are some horses in the ACC, Jamie Arnold, Jason DeCaro, et cetera, a lot of these teams there do not have the depth at pitching overall as the SEC does. I mean, you could bump into a team like Vanderbilt, maybe now Oklahoma in the SEC, and these teams are 6, 7, 8 arms deep. So you're not really seeing that. And I think that's the biggest difference between the SEC and the ACC. And then everybody else, every other conference, you know, it's a pretty big gap.
And one last thing before we jump into the team previews, I feel like I didn't want to change a single thing from when we previewed the SEC last season, Colby. We were drilling win totals left and right. I went 9-5 for every team in this conference. You went 8-6. You predicted Tennessee to win the national championship. I had Tennessee 8-1 to win the SEC regular season last year. We were all over this. Kept the same thing going. So a lot of the information that I've been taking, I put into a gigantic 22-man spreadsheet for each team. Baseball America, D1 baseball, perfect game for a lot of the recruiting information. And yeah, I can't wait to get into this. That's my citation for the entire show there. So
yeah, and it's worth noting that this is the first college baseball season within the SEC where you're going to have Texas and Oklahoma in the conference. So obviously getting the Texas A&M game, circle your fucking calendars for that. You know, anyway, folks, we're going to jump into it. But before we do that, I do want to let Baseball Experience, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and in honor of the big game, yes, the Super Bowl, from now until February 9th, 15% off everything in the SGPN merch store. Get yourself a college baseball experience. Just college baseball experience t-shirt. Just hop on over there. Use that promo code Big Game. No space or anything between the two. Yeah. Jump on over there, grab a shirt, grab a sweatshirt, grab a hat, something like that. And remember, as always, to let it ride. All right. If you didn't catch our ACC preview, it is up and available from last week. But if you're wondering how we do the rundown, we just pretty much go alphabetically. And that's how we'll start things off here with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Look, Rob Vaughn's second season. Remember they had that great gambling scandal. Like wasn't that like a Cincinnati sportsbook or something that it was flagged for just a ton of money spent on one game? Just no one in Ohio had bet on Alabama baseball the entire season, and someone comes in with just a ton of money. Anyway, 33-24 a season ago, 13-17 in the SEC. And they went out in the portal and just attacked, I would say, pretty aggressively, bringing in Brady Neal, catcher from LSU, Jason Torres from Miami, Garrett Stanton from Samford, the Bulldogs there, Brennan Norton from Jacksonville State, Richie Bonamolo Jr. from Wabash. There we go. Deep sea diving they are. Bryce Fowler coming in from Pearl River. Because they had lost a lot of production. So just going out, bringing in a bunch of guys, and that's not including also, Bo Bryans, a Jones College transfer they're excited about, Carson Osmer, a Penn transfer going to the Ivy League. And they also are getting healthier, right? Because Riley Quick and Hagan Banks had season-ending injury a year ago. They're back. Now, they did lose a ton. That's why they had to hit the portal so aggressively. Gage Miller, TJ McCants, just some of the names. There's a slew of them that have left. Bieniek, third. Yeah. So Rob Bond, second season. What do you expect progress here? Or is this one we just sit there and say, year 3 might be the year?
I'm expecting a little of the same for Alabama. They'll kind of be feisty at home and against some of those top teams. You're looking for them to take care of business against some of the bottom teams when they come to town. But last year, this was a really good offense, top 5 in the SEC in a lot of categories. That's kind of where Rob Vaughn makes his money. They kept Jason Jackson, who was the interim head coach from that 2023 betting scandal roster. He was the pitching coach, and he had a lot of talent on this roster last year, and they just kind of battled injuries, and some guys just didn't perform up to the type of talent and what you wanted to see from the Crimson Tide pitching staff. So it's going to be a really interesting year on that front. Zane Adams comes in as the expected number 1. He's a sophomore. Last year as a freshman, 47 strikeouts, 27 walks in 58.2 innings with a 5.37 ERA. I mean, that's pretty damn good for an SEC freshman who was getting a lot of starts there. After him, though, this is a little bit of a question that I have in this rotation. Tyler Fay, Bo Bryans are the 2 kind of expected arms here. Riley Quick is working his way back currently. I don't think he's fully healthy right now. He might not start the season 100%. And I think that's probably a guy that you want in this rotation. Hagan Bakes is one of the better arms for this team, too. He had 37 strikeouts, only 7 walks last season in 33 innings. He's probably going to be one of your top leverage arms out of the pen. Carson Osmer comes in from Penn U, so he's a grad transfer. He was really good for the Quakers, 45 strikeouts in 40 innings with a 4.02 ERA. He had 4 saves there. And Braylon Myers can be nasty. Aiden Finateri is also in this bullpen. He's a former starting pitcher for Georgia Tech, but he had a shoulder injury in the fall. So we'll see how healthy he is come this spring. But Johnny, how about the offense? This is, I think, a group that could be really good again this year.
Yeah, they brought in a lot of transfers. I mean, this isn't the same offense that we saw in the Super Regionals at Wake Forest 2 years ago. Series I was at, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. Riding that big Wake ticket, only to be let down. I will say it again. But, listen, Alabama, feisty program. This is a team that, is going to be spearheaded by Justin LeBron, a guy who is definitely going to be in the first-round contention in next year's draft. He had 12 homers, batted almost 340 as a Frost last year. They brought in a lot of the transfers. I'm excited to see Garrett Stanton. Samford is not a well-known universal baseball program to people that don't follow the sport. But this school has a lot of talent. Garrett Stanton batted .319 with 19 bombs last year. This is a guy that can swing the bat. They're gonna count on LeBron to really be the anchor of this lineup. It is an SEC lineup. It is a team that is probably going to be able to score. Brady Neal coming over from LSU. Anytime you get a hitter from LSU, they're legit. And this is a guy who's probably going to be able to be productive as well. Interested to see what Jason Torres is going to bring, the Miami transfer. He was a good bat for them. And, we talked about this last week with the ACC. Some of these guys are very talented, but they might not get the same opportunities on a team, and that's why they transferred. And listen, transferring from Miami to Alabama, 2 great programs historically. I think Torres is going to be a big contributor in this one as well. And that's kind of a name in the transfer portal this offseason that's kind of gone under the radar. So I do think with the fact that this offense has some skill guys. I like me some Will Hodo, 11 home runs this year. Think he could maybe round it up a little bit closer to 20. I expect him to score runs, but the problem is the pitching, as always, is a question mark for them. They lose Alton Davis, who wasn't good last year, struggled with command problems out of the back end of the bullpen. But 2 years ago, he was one of the more reliable late inning guys. Now he's over at Georgia. But Zane Adams is interesting. This is a guy who's now being asked to at least start the season to be a Friday night guy after Ben Hess gets drafted in the first round by the Yankees. Zane Adams wasn't good last year with a 5.37 ERA, but his 4.52 Sierra suggests that he probably got a little bit unlucky. Zane Adams is draft eligible this year. I don't foresee him being a first rounder, but if he has the kind of bounce back year that he's capable of having with the stuff that he has and the talent he has, only walking 27 guys in 58 and 2/3 innings, think you got to be a little bit better than that. I could see him being a mid-second rounder.
Well, yeah, real quick. The two outfielders, the two new ones coming in from junior college. Bryce Fowler was a junior college All-American. Richie Bonamolo is an expected star as well. Those two are going to be really key additions for this Crimson Tide offense.
And one more quick thing to add. If you watched the show last week, you remember me doing this, pointing out the schedule. Obviously, the SEC is a gauntlet. It's hard to find any type of relief. But if you're Alabama, to open up series play, you start out with Texas A&M and Tennessee. Then you got Oklahoma. Auburn is no slouch. And then you got Mississippi
rivalry
State,
series too.
LSU.
So that's not really a gimme.
So there's really no breaks, especially to start out. I mean, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Oklahoma, those 9 games, it's not out of the realm to see them lose 7 of them.
Yeah, that's an absolute brutal schedule, but you never know. I mean,
it's easy to see a tide turn.
Folks, look, before we jump to the next team, I do want to let you know that the college baseball experience is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Playoffs. We're talking about playoffs. Yeah, bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the National Football League, with the playoffs actually going on right now. Look, scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on all of them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Maybe you're new to this whole operation. Well, you're ready to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick today. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly at DraftKings Sportsbook. So what are you doing? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, but make sure you use that promo code SGP. That's once again, promo code SGP for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help's available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 age plus varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, we are back on the college baseball experience, and now we jump on over to. So we just got done talking Tide. We'll talk about the Auburn Tigers in a second, but alphabetically, first we got the Arkansas Razorbacks. Dave Van Horn, 22nd season. Good Lord, right? 800. He's only got 883 wins. No big deal. They were 44-16 a season ago, 20-10 within the SEC. And this is a team that, they did take some hits. I feel like it's almost impossible not to take hits these days, but Peyton Stovall's gone. Ben McLaughlin gone. Hudson White, Peyton Holt, Hagen Smith, Brady Tigert, all these guys gone. There's a slew of other ones after that as well. So what they have to do, you had to go, attacking the portal once again, bringing in several guys here. Logan Maxwell is a big one from TCU. I know they're excited about. Same with Charles Davalon from Florida Gulf Coast. And man, they hit that. You put a BYU transfer on here. Kuhio Aloy.
I think you drilled it.
One of just so the folks know, a lot of people enjoy me going doing the BYU football preview when I break down the whole roster, and you're just naming these Polynesian players. I got no idea how to name or how to pronounce, half the roster because they're backups and stuff. But anyway, you got one sprinkled in there. BYU. Who knew that their baseball team was
he's the brother of Vahiva, the starting shortstop here for Arkansas. So good connection there.
There we go. Also Brent Iredale coming in from New Mexico Junior College. How many one thing I did not notice is coming into this, past couple of years is how the game is growing in Australia. I feel like there's a lot of Australian players, more than you realize. Cam Coezel also coming in from the Commodores of Vanderbilt. And then they went out and they brought in Zach Root from East Carolina. Zach, you're all confused. You don't know what you're doing. All right. I know you're talented, but what are you doing leaving the jungle? All right. Now I will say Arkansas Razorback fans provided maybe the best fan clip of all time when they had that fan grab a what was that? Was that a possum? Was that a possum a few years ago? Yeah. He got a standing O, checked himself into the hospital about 12 hours later with rabies. Fantastic stuff. Anyway, Bieniek, what do you make of this Razorback team? We know the crowd is great, and they did a great job out in the portal.
Yeah, I love it. And I like a lot of the returning pieces, and they spice it up with the portal, like you mentioned. The biggest question here, I think a lot of people are going to have is, what are they going to do after they lost everybody from the entire weekend rotation? Hagen Smith, Brady Tiger, Mason Molina, all gone. Well, Gabe Gackle, welcome to the show. Last year, he was kind of one of their big leverage arms, kind of a similar role to what Hagen Smith had his sophomore season as well prior to his draft year. Gabe Gackle now as a sophomore is going to step into the Friday night starter role. And this kid's got an electric arm, high 90s fastball, great off speed. Last year he had a 2.32 ERA, 57 strikeouts, 19 walks, and 42.2 innings. I think they went out and got one of the best transfer arms in the portal. Sorry, Colby, but Zach Root's going to be great in the SEC, I think. He's funky enough as a left-handed pitcher to really provide some deception for a lot of these really good hitters. Last year, he had a 3.56 ERA, 76 strikeouts, and 68 innings. Landon Beidelshees is an Ohio State Buckeye transfer who I was lucky enough to see in person. This kid's got a really good arm as well. I don't know if it's going to be him or Gage Wood that gets that final starting spot, but whoever does not, they are probably going to be in a really important position in that bullpen to go alongside some really fun arms. Will McIntyre's back for a 5th season. Christian Fauch can run it up in the high 90s. And Carson Wiggins is the younger brother of Jackson Wiggins. This kid's a monster, 6'5", 210. Fastball is up there in the high 90s there. And I think he's got a good enough off speed to get the job done in the ICC. Very high on this pitching staff. The offense has let them down a couple of times recently, the last 2 seasons, to purple Big 12 teams in their home regionals. But last year they were young. I think another year of some development for some of these guys. I look at specifically Vahiva Aloy, who led the Cape Cod League in home runs, 8 home runs per game, 8 home runs in 21 games played in that league. And Ryder Helfrich, the catcher, led the league in home runs with 11 and 142 ABs. Those are 2 really important hitters in this lineup. Kendall Diggs as well provides some senior experience for Arkansas. I'm high on this team to compete for an SEC title. Johnny?
Arkansas was my preseason winner last year. I liked Arkansas coming in. Hagen Smith heading up that rotation. Mason Molina was good the year before at Texas Tech. Brady Tiger coming in from the pen, who was good a couple years ago as well. Losing the weekend rotation, as you said, anytime that happens, it can be a devastating blow to any team. But as Dave Van Horn has done for 2 decades, this guy knows how to replenish his pitching. Gabe Gackle was an absolute stud last year. This is a guy that is one of the most electric arms in not just the SEC, but in the country. I do have some concerns initially, not season long. Gackle didn't throw more than 3 innings in any game last year. Now he's going to be asked to be going 6, 7, 8 innings or 6, 7 innings. So what does that look like early on? Can he hold up throughout the course of a season? Is he Friday night material? Stuff-wise, he is, but endurance, Effective second, third time through the order, that remains to be seen. Zach Root, big fan of his at ECU. He was very good in that conference. SEC is a different animal. I expect Root to be probably a little bit better than Mason Molina was when he came over from Big 12. I think Root's, deceptiveness is a thing that makes him so successful. His stuff is good of itself, but the deceptive nature is kind of what gives him that little edge. But in this conference, I do have some reservations to, is he going to live up to the billing as a transfer? I do like him. I think he can be good. I just don't know if he's going to be as good as Arkansas is hoping. Landon Beidelshees is a guy that is really intriguing coming from Ohio State. I think his numbers don't necessarily reflect last year's numbers don't necessarily reflect the kind of talent he has. But the good thing is Arkansas has got so much pitching. They're always one of the deepest staffs. Now, offensively, this is why I struggle with them. You have a guy like Kendall Diggs who was battling injuries last year. This guy is a lot better than what his stat line is going to show. He's one of the leaders of this lineup. Wahiba Aloy, he's getting a lot of first-round buzz. And I got to be honest, I don't really see him as a first-rounder after last year. Maybe my tune will be different this year. He's got power, but I don't like the uppercut. It's very aggressive. There's a lot of swing and miss, and that really is what hurt him in June last year in the regional. You got some guys like Cam Koziel coming over from Vanderbilt. Again, we talk about these talented guys that don't play at some of these better programs. Charles Davalin, 10 bops from Florida Gulf Coast. They have a lot of guys that can hit. Reese Robinette's a guy that has a lot of power. I don't know how much, how many at-bats he's going to get. Logan Maxwell from TCU is probably one of my favorite pickups here. This guy is very under the radar for the Horned Frogs. He was one of their best hitters in the College World Series a couple years ago. So I expect him to hit for a high batting average. The guy who I think has to be like the it factor is Ryder Helfrich. He came up with some big hits late in the season last year, but he only batted 179, only had 3 homers. So this guy, especially at the catcher position's got to produce something consistent throughout the year, even be a move the line guy. The issue is there's so many moving parts here. I just don't know if Arkansas is going to be able to do it on the offensive end to the level of some of these other teams. And some of these other teams have pitching staffs that can compete with theirs. It's a lot of talent. It's a lot of what ifs. But the biggest problem for me with Arkansas, Noah, is the fact that every time they get to the regionals, they always implode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about I think they compete for regular season, like Dave Van Horn's done every single season. Last year, the offense was pitiful. They still won the SEC West. I don't think that this offense is getting any worse. I think there's some development that I can count on. So I like Arkansas, and I'm betting on Gackle. I don't think there's any concerns, just like there weren't any with Higgins Smith last year. I even drafted him in our fantasy league in the third round. So,
I like Gackle. I like Gackle. I like him to potentially be a first rounder next year if he starts coming up very impressive this season, because this could set the table to a draft year next year. One interesting thing about Arkansas, especially if we're talking for the SEC odds, pretty good schedule to start out. They're at Ole Miss, then they come home and play South Carolina, then they're at Vandy, then they have Mizzou. Gets a little bit tougher in the middle, starting in the middle of April. They go to Georgia, they got Texas A&M, they're at Florida, Texas, LSU, and they close with Tennessee. So it's a gauntlet to end, but they have a winnable first 4 series that if they can kind of get off the board hot and be one of the top 3, top 4 teams, they're going to have to weather the storm in that back half, but the first half of them is winnable. So Arkansas might be an interesting bet early in the conference play for weekend series.
Jumping now to the rivals of Alabama, the Auburn Tigers. Butch Thompson, 9th season, 283 and 212 and 1 all the time. Just 27 and 25 a year ago, 8 and 21 in the SEC. That's not going to get it done there. And they lost a slew of guys, but I guess from one point of view, let's get them out. Let's get new guys in. Bobby Pierce, Cooper Weiss, Mason Manners, Chase Alsup, all of them. Joseph Gonzalez, I believe, as well. Gone. Those are key losses from a year ago. But like I said, They bring in a highly touted freshman in Chris Rembert, and then they go out in the portal and they go, Bristol Carter. I don't know what you're thinking, leaving ECU for Auburn, just for a bag of cash. I mean, come on, buddy. They also bring in Lucas Lexington Steele from Samford, Eric Snow from South Florida, Jet Johnston, great name, from Texas A&M. Obviously, they were great. Cade Fisher from Florida, and Samuel Dutton from LSU, and don't forget the Creighton transfer, Mason Coke there. Bieniek, your thoughts on the Auburn Tigers? Is this still a rebuilding process for them?
So they missed the NCAA tournament last year. And Butch has never missed it 2 years in a row. That's a lot of things that you'll hear in the preseason about this Auburn Tigers team. They do bring back my boy Ike Irish from Southeastern Michigan. He was on that Orchard Lake St. Mary's team that was absolutely loaded. Nolan Schubert, high school teammate. Alex Mooney, high school teammate. Plenty of others as well. He's going to be the star of the show. The pitching needs to be better than it was last year. And Butch Thompson is a pitching coach. That's where his coaching foundation was built. And he's going to rely on a couple of transfers to really save the day for him this season. Because, I don't know what's in store if you get another season where they were kind of the stepping stone in the conference like they were last year. Cade Fisher, Sam Dutton, two inter-conference SEC transfers, didn't have great seasons last year. Fisher had much more run than Dutton did. Fisher was getting the ball on Friday nights as Florida's second best starting pitcher last year. And he just wasn't cutting it as a starting pitcher. Got moved to the bullpen in the midseason, finished with a 7.13 ERA, 76 strikeouts. He can miss bats, but can he give you the length that you kind of want him to give you as a starting pitcher? I have no idea. And then they're going to have a couple of freshman starters in Christian Chatterton and Jackson Saunders. Chatterton's got a four pitch mix, mid 90s fastball there. And Jackson Saunders, just kind of one pitch guy. And I'm not sure if that's going to fly in the SEC. Carson Myers and Hayden Murphy are really good pieces in the bullpen. Mason Cook is going to be out till March. He's the Creighton transfer. So we'll see what kind of help he can provide when he gets healthy here. But overall, I think I'm a little bit cooler on the Tigers this season than other people on Twitter and that like cover SEC baseball. I am not one to doubt Butch Thompson, but very cautiously fading them this season. So I have them in the bottom half of the SEC. Johnny, what are your thoughts here?
Auburn is a team that it didn't seem like that long ago that they were in the super regionals at Oregon State, so close to making it to the College World Series.
Well, they did. They beat Oregon
State. They beat Oregon State. See, this is what happens when you get old, man. You're forgetting stuff. But I mean, Sonny DiChiara, remember him? This guy was carrying this Auburn team. This guy was hitting boppers, left and right. Listen, Auburn is a team that I would like to see do well, especially given the fact that they're a 25-1 price. They're going to be led by Ike Irish. I think Ike Irish could be the first catcher off the board. This is a guy that can be firmly a top 10 pick this summer. Cooper McMurray, very dangerous player. I mean, the two of those guys anchoring that lineup is dangerous. Then you add a couple of the other guys. Bristol Carter was a stud at ECU last year. High batting average, 344. You got Derek Fabian, the younger brother of Judd Fabian. He's got a little bit of oomph to his swing as well. The big one I'm actually very curious about is Kay Bellew, younger brother of Max Bellew. Max Bellew is actually one of my Golden Spikes candidates, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But in our group chat, one of our guys was saying, I don't know, I might be more excited about Kay Bellew than Max Bellew this year. I feel like the thing is with Auburn, they're going to be able to hit. They always find a way to hit. You have two really, really dangerous hitters in Cooper McMurray and Ike Irish. But again, it's always the pitching. It's the same old story. We haven't seen legitimate pitching from this team in a few years. Cade Fisher has a lot of talent. This is a guy that was supposed to take the next step last year at Florida as the Friday night guy, having Liam Peterson as the Saturday guy. But he couldn't hack it. He got lit up by St. John's early first weekend of the season, never really recovered. He's got dangerous stuff, but this is a guy that cannot locate. This is a guy that misses the zone. This is a guy that can get hit hard. And then you're going to bring in Samuel Dutton, a guy who wasn't really anything meaningful at LSU. The fact is we're going to rely on these two guys to head up the rotation, and then you have two freshmen coming in to, save the day. There's nobody I can legitimately say right now I'm confident throwing on a Friday night. Fisher, if he gets his act together, he can be one of the better starters in the SEC. But that's a big if. Even if he does do that. The other guys, I'm not sold. We could see a lot of mixing and matching as the season goes on because Butch Thompson's going to be looking to do some different things to try and give his team a chance to win. And, here's the thing. Auburn's offense, the pitching doesn't have to be that good because their hitting can make up the difference in a lot of these games, especially at home.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of a wild card. I see the chat talking about it. Crutch saying I took a long shot on Auburn at 80-1.
I had a discussion with him a couple weeks back. I don't know if I love the play, but
did you grill him? Crutch, we love you, buddy.
I did grill him.
Here's the other thing, right? To win the College World Series for Auburn, it's going to be difficult, because they're going to be buried behind the SEC. There's a lot of those middle of the road teams that are, in this conference would be conference winners elsewhere.
Yeah, we've seen teams break out from huge prices too. Johnny, you had Mississippi State last year. They were kind of like what everybody was saying was the 17th host, could have hosted last year. And I think it's a good strategy, long-term play. Just get a piece of one of these longer shots in the SEC that you believe in, and then just try to make some money out of it by getting yourself in positions if they are not a title contender come May.
I'll say this, Noah and Colby. If Auburn starts out hot and is kind of flashing some of that pitching development, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't. There is upside, especially because of the offense. Their pitching just has to be decent. That's the big conundrum. I mean, they start with Vanderbilt. They're home to Vanderbilt, then they're at Kentucky, then they're at Georgia, then they're home to Bama, home to LSU, at Texas, home to Mississippi State, at Tennessee, versus South Carolina, at Ole Miss to close. This schedule is not that bad. In terms of an SEC schedule, this is pretty favorable. So if their pitching, led by Cade Fisher, gets its act together and is halfway decent, then yes, I can absolutely see Auburn taking a step forward and maybe challenging up here. I mean, this is a team that I want to kind of see first how their pitching looks, but they're going to be able to be a fun, weekend series. You take a shot on them here because they're going to be big dogs in a lot of their games.
I was just about to say, I thought they had one of the easier schedules in the conference.
On paper, they have definitely one of the easiest.
Yeah.
I mean, they face Georgia, LSU, Texas, and Tennessee. I mean, those are the tough teams. They avoid Texas A&M. They avoid Arkansas. They avoid I'm bugging. Who else do they avoid? They avoid Florida. Yeah. I mean,
but part of our handicap last season, Bieniek, correct me if I'm wrong, was that we loved Tennessee's schedule. We
were talking pre-show. I don't think that there's truly a schedule that sticks out from the rest as, this is the schedule that you want. I just think that there's 13 teams in the SEC that are top 40 in the country. Like every single week, it's a damn grind. So I really haven't put. I looked at the schedule, did an episode on it back in October when it came out, but I don't think there's any kind of really advantageous
huge advantage. Okay, fair. Folks, before we get to the next team, I want to let you know that the college baseball experience is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Yes, Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all the sports, and Underdog is always making it easier to win with profit boost and gimme pick'ems. They got college baseball, they got college football, they got college basketball, they got everything really: MLB, NFL, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and much more. And you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries as well. So what are you doing? Sign up. And when you do, sign up with that promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer. up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Yes, SGPN's proud partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform, and it helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds. Look, you can sit back and copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard. You'll probably make money. But me, I like to build my own, and then Rhythm will adjust around what I like. It's absolutely fantastic, folks. So get on over there. They got the brand new app. You can check it all from your app. They got it all: NFL picks, NFL props, college basketball, NBA. What you better believe when baseball comes around, they'll have that action for you. Claim your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. All right, we are back talking Southeast Conference baseball, and next up, let's go to Bieniek's boys. Man, the Florida Gators, 36-30 a year ago, 13-17 in the SEC. Kevin O'Sullivan, 17th season, 717 wins and 349 losses in that tenure. Obviously, Bieniek, I know this is a team near and dear to your heart. Losing some big guys like, say, Jack Caglianone. Gosh, I can't fucking pronounce his name right now, but he was a stud. Dale Thomas, Michael Robertson, Brandon Neely. They just got, they lost a lot of production from a year ago, but they are bringing back some. So they went out in the portal and brought in some talent, but they also bring back Colby Shelton, Luke Heyman, Brody Dunne. And they went out in the portal and brought in Kyle Jones from Stetson, the Hatters, Bobby Bozer from South Florida, Landon Stripling from Texas Tech, Blake, how do I pronounce this here? Sear? Yeah. Yep. From Miami, the Hurricanes here. His big guy battled injuries last season, but nice get there. Justin Nadeau coming in from the Dolphins of Jacksonville. Billy Barlow from Clemson, and then Matthew Jenkins from Santa Fe College right there. Wow. Go check it out. Some art in Santa Fe. And we got a pitcher. Bieniek, your thoughts on the Gators?
Power pitching and power hitting is the name of the game for Florida and Kevin O'Sullivan every single year. Last year, they kind of struggled at doing the average things. Couldn't hit for average and couldn't really throw strikes. That was the big issue, as walks killed him on the mound, and at the plate, strikeouts killed him at the plate. This year, it's gonna be tough because, like you mentioned, Colby, they're losing Caglianone on the mound and they're losing Neely, and those are the two most important arms for this team during the postseason. Carried them all the way to Final Four in the College World Series. We'll see what we get from Florida this year. Liam Peterson's back. Last year, he was the Friday night starter because they started Cags on Sunday. And, honestly, high 90s stuff, good breaking balls, 6.18 ERA freshman year. Could have been a little bit better. 76 strikeouts, 40 walks, and 62.2 innings. I'm excited about Jake Clemente, though. He had a great summer on in the Cape Cod League there, and then Pierce Capola is just projectability, big lefty, weird arm slot that I think if everything clicks, he could have a really good year. But am I betting on it? Not personally. Billy Barlow's bringing some experience into the rotation, as he was one of the more important arms the last 2 seasons for Clemson. Luke McNeely is the back end hammer for the Gators this season. Last year as a freshman appeared in 26 games, 35.2 innings. He had 43 strikeouts and 21 walks. He's got to bring down the ERA, as he had a 7.07 ERA. But the offense here, I think, is definitely the more sexier of the 2 units for the Gators. And Johnny, get into O'Sullivan's lineup here.
Yeah, listen, Florida was a team that I didn't think should have made it last year. I think they got in because of their reputation. They're an SEC team. And you know what? Listen, they said, well, you don't want us here. Guess what? We're still going to go to the College World Series. And they put on a show. And good for them. And all led by Jack Caglianone. Kid's a superstar. Kid should have went #1 in the draft. You lose a guy like him, not just for what his production is, but just the leader he is, what he means. Like, even when the chips are down, all the other guys look to him because they know he's going to come up with the big hit or he's going to come up with the big play, whatever it is. So taking him out of the lineup is huge. But the good news is, you keep Colby Shelton. This is a guy that was supposed to leave in the draft, but he didn't like his draft slot, so he came back. 20-plus homer guy. He's got to improve on the average, though. Only 254 a season ago. Bobby Boser, I'm excited about. I think he could up his home run total into the 20s. South Florida transfer, got some pop, good batting average, batted just under 300 a season ago with an OPS in the 4 digits. Cade Curlin is a guy who, he is one of the most important pieces to this team. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a first rounder this year, but if he kind of puts up a performance that we've seen from him in the past 2 years, he's definitely a guy that I could hear his name called in probably the mid to late second rounds. Brody Donay showed a ton of pop in the College World Series last year. This kid is a behemoth. They're going to probably rely on him for the long ball this year. Luke Heyman, same kind of thing. So like Noah said, the name of the game is power for them. They got to eliminate the strikeouts. Typically the teams that make the run are the ones in the crucial moments, can get on, get over, and get in, not strike out, put the ball in play. So I think when it comes to Florida's lineup, they're going to be fine. They're going to go through some growing pains without Cags having to, hit a pop-up and it goes 500 feet because it carries, because he's so strong. I think they're going to be fine overall as a lineup. Blake Sear as well. I'm very excited about Sear. This is a kid who was a monster as a freshman. I think, last year wasn't his best, and he's going to come and have a big season this year. Look out for Blake Sear. I think he can end up flying up draft boards. Pitching
even though they don't bring back Cags, they return 5 guys that hit 14-plus, 13-plus home runs. Ty Evans, this season was cut short because of a broken wrist, but, he was one of the more important offensive pieces there, too.
Yeah, they're going to be able to hit. Even without Cags, their offense is going to be good. It's how bad do they strike out? What does their runners in scoring position look like? That's always the big thing with them, especially now. Pitching is where it can really, really vary. They're going to be a high-variance pitching staff. The thing that worries me outside of the rotation is, you look at Brandon Neely. Brandon Neely was one of the most consistent and one of the most clutch closers in college the last 2 years. This guy was nails, especially in the postseason. So you're losing that guy where you're like, listen, it's a tight game. It's one run. There's 2 guys on. I'm sending in Neely to shut it down because I know he's going to do it. You don't have that guy right now. Nobody in this staff has proven to be that guy in the late innings. Liam Peterson, I think, if he can clean up his act, he went through some growing pains as a freshman. He's got really good stuff. If he continues to develop the command, able to hit his spots, able to mix his pitches, even in the SEC, I think he can take that jump this year. We're going to be seeing this guy called high up next season in the 2026 draft. Pierce Coppola, kid from my neck of the woods. He's from North Jersey. This kid I've been hearing about for a long time. He's actually friends with my little cousin. He goes, this kid is a maniac. I've been hearing about him since he was like 14 years old. If Pierce Coppola can stay healthy, this is also a guy that is going to be a joy to watch and a joy to bet on because this stuff is awesome. And as Noah said, the arm slot is very funky. It's hard for it's hard for hitters to pick it up. 6'8" frame. I just don't know at the moment if I can bank on Florida's what-if pitching staff. I would put Florida, because of the experience, because of the coaching, and because of the talent, I feel like they're still, for me, a top half team in the SEC. I have them right outside of my top 5. I don't think they're going to make a run to the College World Series or win it, but it's a team that I can see being something of a contender, probably in my tier 3 bucket in terms of title runs.
I agree with you.
Honestly, schedule-wise, it's tough in the beginning. They're at Tennessee, then they're home to Georgia, softens up with Ole Miss. They got Vandy, Mizzou, Mississippi State. Then they got Arkansas, South Carolina, Texas, Bama. So the schedule is not brutal. That's why I think their 13-17 record last year, I could see that being a little bit more of 16-14.
All right, let's talk about their rivals, the Georgia Bulldogs. This is the team, Bieniek, that I hit on last year. 43-17, 17-13 in the SEC for Wes Johnson. Now, look, it wasn't that long ago that they won 21 games in SEC play. 17 last year, I think, was a surprise. Some they lost a good amount of players though from that team. Charlie Condon, Corey Collins, Dylan Goldstein, Brian Zeldin, just a slew of guys that are now gone. Now they went out in the portal, brought in this one might. Bieniek, do you know which team brought in the most transfers? Because I was thinking it might be the Georgia Bulldogs.
This one killed it. Georgia and Kentucky killed it in the portal. They brought in a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and just to name some of them, Brian Curley from VCU, Zach Brown from Ohio State, Alton Davis from Alabama, Christian Adams from FAU, Daniel Jackson from Wofford, Charlie Jones from Air Force, going out to the Air Force to get some. Devin Obey from Duke. We know Duke was a fun team a season ago. Nolan McCarthy coming in from those Kentucky Wildcats. Ryan Black from the Mavericks of UT Arlington. Rylan Zabrowski from the Miami, Ohio Redskins. So, I mean, they brought in a slew of guys. The question is, can they duplicate the success from a season ago? Bieniek, your thoughts on these dogs?
Well, I think they got better on the mound. Last year, that was the big issue, and I think a lot of the losses are addition by subtraction. And like you mentioned, 3 key additions here. Alton Davis, a big-time left-handed arm coming in from Alabama. The Crimson Tide couldn't really unlock it in his sophomore season. Now in his draft year, he's heading to Wes Johnson, who's got a good pitching background, been all over the place lately with LSU's national championship team and with the Minnesota Twins. He's going to rely on Wes Johnson to maybe unlock something that quite wasn't tapped into in Tuscaloosa. Brian Curley is a little guy, 5'9", bulldog on the mound. Really important piece that is going to be there in the back end of that bullpen for Georgia this year, as he was terrific for VCU in the regional. And Zach Brown from Ohio State is another nice piece here. But the rotation is interesting because these guys were kind of, at times some of the issues, but these are probably the 3 of the better options from last season. Colton Smith and Leighton Finley right now battling for that number 1 spot, but these are your go-to guys. Colton Smith's got more swing and miss to his game. He had 105 strikeouts and only 69.2 innings, and he wasn't a starting pitcher to begin last season. He earned that starting role kind of halfway through. Leighton Finley's kind of been there, done that for Georgia in the last 2 seasons. He threw 76 innings last year, 76 strikeouts, only 28 walks. He's kind of the more steady arm of the 2 and more trustworthy, I would say, because Colton Smith on his, if he doesn't have his best, can be a little all over the place with a 5.56 ERA. But Zach Harris, the number 3 here, is, going to be taking a step up into the starting rotation. Last year, he was kind of a swing guy. He'd either start games and only go a few innings, or he'd be kind of middle relief, long relief. He appeared in 20 games last year, 45 strikeouts, only 18 walks in 38 innings. Interesting arm, but all of them kind of got hit around a little bit in SEC play. So we'll see what happens here in the SEC, and we'll see what happens with the offense as they have to replace Condon, Johnny.
I love Georgia this year. I was a little hesitant. So here's the thing. I kind of do a mental inventory of, okay, who do I like when I look at these teams, and, kind of do some research. And then I find out more information and, listen to some of the D1, the D1 insight on who's going to be there and what are they expecting. And, over the last few weeks, my take on Georgia has improved. I had Georgia probably 7 a few weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago, and kind of seeing who they brought in, kind of seeing what it was going to look like after reading the D1 articles and seeing their interviews with the coaches. I'm like, you know what? I think I got to move them up. They're inside the top 5 for me, even with the loss of Charlie Condon, and that's why I was like, I don't know, can they absorb that loss? And truthfully, I think they can. Charlie Condon, Golden Spikes winner, thank God I hit that last year, was a superstar. He was the best player in college baseball. You don't just lose him, though. You lose Corey Collins, the guy who was batting leadoff, the guy who was probably the most unsung hero of not just the team, but probably the conference. Him, Condon, and Dylan Goldstein. You lose all three of those guys. That's 70 home runs right there. But you know what? Even though they lost 70 home runs and those three guys alone, a team that hit 150 bops last season, I still see Georgia being a team that hits 120 home runs plus while also batting over 300 as a team. Again, you look at who they have. Let's start with Trey Phelps. Trey Phelps is a guy who a lot of us in the community like as a Golden Spikes contender this year. He showed so much last season, 12 home runs, 353 average, over 1,100 OPS, and he wasn't really even getting the amount of reps that he could have gotten. But now that's going to change. He's going to be the bread and butter of that lineup. You bring in Devin Obie, who is a stud at Duke, but he was buried under a lot of other guys. That's why he didn't get the recognition that he should have. Nolan McCarthy, a behemoth for Kentucky, has a lot of power. You have Slade Alford, who was under the radar, 17 home runs, 300 average. You bring in a Ryan Black from UT Arlington, doubles machine, 21 doubles. You got who else do you have? Robbie Burnett. You're bringing him in from UNC Asheville. So you look at all the transfers. It's a new lineup, but you look at what Wes Johnson's doing. The amount of offensive talent that this team is going to have again is ridiculous. And honestly, wouldn't even talk about Colby Branch. I think Colby Branch, 17 home runs, could be in the low 20s this year. So, it looks like it's a very deep lineup, a lot of production, going to be another tough out for opposing pitching staffs. And let's be honest, if Henry Hunter, not to be confused with Hunter Henry, takes a step forward, gets his power numbers up, maybe 4 home runs becomes 10 home runs, 264 average becomes 280, 285, and his production as a catcher replacing Fernando Gonzalez, I think the lineup is going to be one of the better ones in the country this year. And, the pitching is going to improve. And the pitching was why I really had a lot of reservations. But Leighton Finley's got really good stuff. I think, he got a little bit unlucky last year. His Sierra was 3.68 as opposed to a 4.14 ERA. Colton Smith stuff's ridiculous. A lot of swing and miss. But the big one is Alton Davis. I think Alton Davis just had a down year. We saw what he did as a freshman. He's got a lot of juice. And the big thing that plagued Georgia's pitching last year was the back end of the bullpen. I mean, you remember that Kentucky game where they were up 7 runs and they squandered the lead and they lost. I think there's a lot more arms this year. Wes Johnson's got a much better pitching staff, and they're going to take a step forward. And quite frankly, let's not forget about Charlie Goldstein, Noah. Charlie Goldstein was a guy who always seemed to go out there and have big performances against these really tough teams, and it caught a lot of people by surprise. So he's coming back 10-1. I think Georgia 10-1 is probably the best bang for your buck to win the SEC. If they won it, nobody should be surprised. And considering the schedule they have, it's not brutal. It's tough. It's SEC. They start out with Kentucky, then they go to Florida. They play Auburn, then Texas, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Mizzou, Alabama, and they close with Texas A&M, which you better believe that's going to decide somebody's hosting in the super regional or the regional. This is a team, even in I would say a tougher schedule for the SEC, definitely can win it. 10-1 is a good buy.
That's right. Get on over there, Dog fans. Jump on in on the action. Let's talk about, I know the chat has been talking for a little bit here about these Kentucky Wildcats. Obviously just a magical run a season ago, 46-16, 22-8 in the SEC for Nick Mingoni. And is that an L? I thought it was an L. No.
Just softer, I guess.
Gotcha. 264 wins right there on in his 9 years there in Lexington, and last season was a fun one, I think, for a lot of Wildcat fans. Dylan Kuntz is coming in, a transfer from Campbell. I know they're excited about. Same with Luke Lawrence from Illinois State. They did go to some obscure places here. Columbia in the Ivy League. Cole Hage coming in. Carson Hansen from the Milwaukee Panthers coming in. Sean Montoya from the Aztecs of San Diego State. Will Marcy from Memphis, who previously was at NC State, the Pussy Pack there. Nick McRae Coming in from the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State, Ethan Walker from the Longwood Lancers coming in. Scott Rouse from the Whores of Radford coming in. And Simon Gregerson from the Sycamores of Indiana State. They did lose some key guys off of last year's team. Trey Poozer, Mason Moore, Dominic Neiman, Ryan Nicholson, Mitchell Daly. There's Ryan Waldschmidt. There was some substantial losses, but I feel like once again, this day and age, that's just going to happen. Bieniek, the Wildcats, I know it was magical, right? Is there still some magic there?
Yeah, I love Nick Mingione and everything that he's about. Last year was preaching to the choir that Kentucky was legit after that Tennessee series when a lot of people were selling their stock there. Now's the time that I'm going to sell stock in Kentucky. I'm going to maybe next year, because look, you live and die by the portal. Last year they got some really good additions. This year, just on paper and just what I'm seeing and hearing out of fall camp, I'm personally not like the biggest fan of. I don't know if this is going to be a team that contends for an SEC title. I don't know if this is a team that's going to host in the NCAA tournament this year. They lose 7 starters from the lineup and the entire weekend rotation, and they're going to attempt to replace the weekend rotation with Nick McKay from South Dakota State, Ethan Walker from Longwood, and Scott Rouse from Radford. All 3 of those programs were losing teams last year and have been losing programs for their tenures. And when you look under the hood at FIP, which is an advanced analytic that takes into account, kind of batted ball data and how kind of lucky you can get. We're talking about guys at low majors with 433 FIP, 595 FIP, 575 FIP, all expected to take on huge roles in the SEC as weekend starters. And I'm not buying in. I'm going to sell my stock in Kentucky here. I think that the depth of their arm barn is actually good. I like Ben Cleaver. I like Robert Hogan. I like Jackson Nova, left-hander they have there. And I like Evan Byers, but who I'm currently hearing are the starting pitchers, which could be totally different things come May. This is not the sexiest team that I want to hitch my wagon to in the preseason, and with a lot of returning, or with not a lot of returning production on the offensive side of the ball. I don't see currently where Kentucky could have, that upper tier success that maybe Big Blue Nation is hoping for and expecting for this upcoming season after breaking the ice, getting Omaha for the first time in program history. It was a great year. I think it's a little bit of a rebuilding year for Mingione and Kentucky, as he did lose some assistants off of that staff the last 2 years as well.
Yeah, Kentucky, I wasn't a fan of Kentucky. Everyone's like, oh, great story. I don't care. They were a pest. And you know what? Listen, the fact is, I think every team gets lucky. Like, I'm not saying it to sound sour. Just in order to make a run, things have to go your way. There's intangibles. There's little things that you don't even look at that have to go your way. I think really what Kentucky was last year was lightning in a bottle. They caught a lot of breaks. All the good teams in the SEC, they seem to play them at home. There's a couple things that went their way late. And you know what? Listen, their pitching staff tightened up towards the end of the year. This is a different team, like Noah said. You lose your entire weekend rotation. You lose the meat and potatoes of your lineup. They lost everybody. They're so gutted that they're trying to scramble and refill their team with all these guys from like basically D7 programs and mid-majors. They don't have any real horses that they brought in from legitimate schools in the Power 5 or Power 4. I don't think they'll be bad. I wouldn't expect them to win 22 games again. I think Kentucky, Nick Mingione, he's a good coach. He does the little things. That's Kentucky's MO. Little things, small ball, don't beat yourself. Let everybody else do it. That's what worked for them so well last year. That's what you're taught at 8 years old playing baseball, the fundamentals, and that's what they do really well. I think they'll be decent. I wouldn't expect to them to contend for an SEC title. I have them outside my top 10 for the SEC rankings, which we will get into shortly. But, I do it for every team, so I enjoy listing off the schedules. They start at Georgia. They have Auburn. They have Texas A&M at College Station, Ole Miss, Texas, at Tennessee, home to South Carolina, at Mississippi State, home to Oklahoma, at Vanderbilt to close out. That's pretty tough. 22 wins last year. I'd probably expect Kentucky to be more in like the 12 or 13 range this year.
Yeah, Kentucky and Mingione have long preached that experience wins in college baseball, and they schedule pretty damn well, so the RPI is going to be good if they're winning these games. And they've got plenty of seniors and juniors and grad transfers on this roster. We'll see if it pans out, and if it does, and I'll happily eat crow. And you know what, I might even buy in more to this kind of thinking and roster building. But I'm gonna wait and see on Kentucky this year.
All right, let's hop on over to the LSU Tigers. Obviously, they were fantastic. Won a national championship recently, and look, 43-23 a year ago, 13-17 in the SEC. What? That's not supposed to happen. Jay Johnson in his 4th season there in Baton Rouge, 137-62. And look, they've lost some key pieces from the past couple of years, but Tommy White, Hayden Travinsky's gone, Brady Neal, Luke Holman, Gage Jump, Griffin Herring, Mac Bingham. I mean, they've lost some pieces, but once again, just like you lose, you also can grab a bunch of players from the portal. Now, this one might be the most obscure portal class that I can think of. As far as all these teams going out and getting Luis Hernandez from Indiana State. Okay. At the catcher spot. Second baseman, Daniel Dickinson coming in from Utah Valley. Blaze Priester coming in from Meridian Community College. Dalton Beck coming in from Incarnate Word. Anthony Iacon from UC San Diego with the Tritons. Zach Cohen from the Wofford Terriers. So, I mean, the scouting team, I commend you. Now will it pay off? Bieniek, LSU has been a power. Are they going to get, is this a bounce back season after, tough skidding a year ago?
I think so. And I think I was all over this kind of, and we're going to talk about it later with Tennessee, maybe. The teams off a national championship, they kind of hit early skids, and whether it's rebuilding or retooling, LSU kind of did the exact same thing. They started really rough. I think it was 3-9 in the SEC, and then they turned it on late. I think they're going to be a better overall team this upcoming spring. And talking about obscure places, one of them that was Zach Cowan, as he absolutely dealt against them in the regional. So that was an easy scout for this LSU coaching staff, as he'll be an interesting piece, whether he's in the rotation or in the bullpen. There's a couple of really electric arms, maybe none more in the country than Chase Shores. He's a 6'8", 240-pound monster. He missed last season due to Tommy John. His freshman year, he only appeared in 7 games, but this is a guy that has all the potential in the world to, I think, be one of the best pitchers in the country, one of the top draft picks this season in the MLB draft. We're talking about high 90s fastball, really good off speed. And I just think that there's a lot that you can project towards Chase Shores being one of the more dominant pitchers this season. We got Shaq on the baseball
field here.
Yes, he is. I mean, they say he's 245 and has filled out his frame. We haven't seen him in a year and a half, but he was, sticks when he was on the mound as a freshman. Cade Anderson last year as a freshman was stellar. Under 4 ERA, 59 strikeouts, 20 walks in 38.1 innings there. He had a 255 Sierra. I'm expecting this kid to go out and shove on the weekend as well. Anthony Iacon, like you mentioned, the transfer from UC San Diego, is another really good piece. He was on the U.S. Collegiate National Team during the summer. He had a 3.07 ERA in the Big West, 85 strikeouts, 24 walks, in 82 innings. He had a 190 batting average against. This kid's also really good. And they bring back Gavin Guidry. They acquired Jacob Williams from Nicholls State, who is an all-or-nothing guy. He walked 76 freaking hitters in the Southland, but struck out 106. And then they bring in two really outstanding freshmen, William Schmidt and Cooper Williams. Schmidt has a disgusting curveball, one of the more disgusting ones that I've ever seen, and Cooper Williams is a 3-pitch mix guy from the left-handed side. LSU is going to be really good on the mound, and I don't think they're going to take too much of a step back without Tommy White, Johnny. Offensively, how about you?
I love LSU this year. I absolutely love them. I covered them extensively on my Breaking Bet podcast earlier in the week with Joe Doyle. Had him on, great draft analyst, by the way. And we covered LSU extensively. And when the odds came out and when I was kind of doing the mental inventory, a few months ago, I circled LSU. I love the Tigers this year. They're in that key three I talked about last week with Virginia, LSU, and Texas A&M. Those are like my three teams that I love this year, that if one of them didn't make the College World Series finals, I'd be shocked. Add Tennessee to that bucket as well. That's like that tier one, Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M, and Virginia. I'd expect one of them to make it. LSU is a team I liked last year, and I wasn't shocked by the fact that they started slow, breaking in a lot of new players, coming off a championship run, getting gutted. They had to work a new line in. This year, I think they're going to soar. You bring in some monster transfers. Luis Hernandez was a stud at Indiana State, 23 tanks, 360 average. Daniel Dickinson's a guy that's going to be getting a lot of first-round comps all spring long for this summer's draft. 367, 18 bops at Utah Valley. Blaze Priester from Community College, 10 home runs, 357 average. Dalton Beck, pretty solid from Incarnate Word. No, 377 average, 18 homers. But let's talk about the guys that were there. Jared Bear Jones. They call him a bear because of the size of a bear. This kid hit 28 home runs, the quietest 28 home runs last year. I'd expect him to be in contention for over 30 again. Keep his average in the low 300s, absolutely. Wouldn't shock me if he ends up being a Golden Spikes candidate, somebody that we're watching come May. Braswell, leadership, solid player. Stephen Milam was huge for them down the stretch. He was making so many big plays, coming up big at the plate. Monster Milam, huge. Love him there. Derek Curiel, big-time freshman, a guy we're going to be hearing his name very early off the board in 2027. Jake Brown, another one. Keita Ramade, that's a guy who's also a highly recruited freshman for this year. Probably going to hear his name up high. A catcher that can help, fill in the DH role, maybe take some days off for Luis Hernandez. I think this lineup is going to absolutely rake. This team has 3 of the top 10 freshmen in this class for 2027, for the 2027 draft. It's absolutely disgusting. Jay Johnson does what he does. He is one of the best coaches in college baseball history for a reason. Let's move on to the pitching staff. I believe Chase Shores this year, if he picks up and rebounds off Tommy John after not pitching for 2 years, and he can kind of fix that command issue, maybe tighten up a little of his secondary pitches. Do not be shocked if Chase Shores is not only a first rounder, which he's not even getting any respect for right now. Don't be surprised if he's the first pitcher off the board. Don't be surprised if he's the number 1 pick this year, if it all comes together. 6'8", 250 plus, an absolute hoss. I have so much projectability for Chase Shores. I'm not going to say he's going to take that schemes jump from complete obscurity from the outside world to like overnight superstar, but he's gonna have a trajectory that's lesser than that, but still impressive as hell. I think Chase Shores is going to be an absolute superstar this year. I cannot wait to see him. Allow Chase Shores to introduce himself to the world. We're going to be seeing a lot of those highlight clips on Twitter that everybody's going to start picking their heads up. And come the second half of the spring, people will be like, oh my God, this kid from LSU, Chase Shores, another one, a Paul Skeens Jr. Kate Anderson, great last year in a limited role. Anthony Ianson, big transfer from UC San Diego. Zach Howe, another transfer. Noah said it. He dealt against them when he was with Wofford. You have Guidry, who's a high leverage guy. He was so for the LSU title run in 2023. William Schmidt could be one of the top picks in 2027. The freshman, we don't even know where he's going to pitch. He might make the weekend rotation. They have so much pitching. They don't even know what to do with it. They're going to be 8-9 arms deep. And when you want to make a College World Series title run, this is the kind of thing you need. It's absolutely disgusting. LSU is definitely in the contention for a title run this year. They're actually a bet I gave out a few weeks ago when Bet Rivers came out with the conference odds. I have LSU, a 2-unit play at 7-1, along with Texas A&M, who we will cover. I think LSU is going to be a 21-plus win SEC team. And I apologize, I'm running a little bit long. I'm very passionate about this group this year.
You're good, man.
Mizzou, Texas, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Auburn, Alabama, and then so that's like the first couple months. Then it gets hard at the end. Tennessee, Texas A&M, Arkansas, they close with South Carolina. But this is a team that's absolutely going to be looking like they're going to win 21 to 22 SEC games this year. Love LSU. Bye, fucking bye.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, I was already feeling all right about them, but after hearing you talk, I'm ready to go double down. All right, let's jump next to Hail State. 40-23 a year ago, Mississippi State was the Bulldogs there with Chris Lemonis, 7th season, 207 and 116. It wasn't that long ago that they won the national championship there. They lost some guys just like every other team, but Dakota Jordan gone, Connor Husak gone, David Mershon gone, Amani Larry gone, Logan Kohler gone, and then a slew of others gone as well. They brought in, I think one of the things to note too is Ross Highfill is back after being injured at the catcher spot. But then they go out and bring in Ace Reese from Houston. They bring in Garrick Frey from the Lions of North Alabama. Noah Sullivan from South Carolina Upstate. Reed Stallman from the Campbell Camels. And Sawyer Reeves from the Citadel. Also brought in some pitching help. Chase Hungate from the Virginia Wahoos there. And then Jacob Pruitt from Indiana State. Indiana State's whole damn roster went to the SEC. I feel like them and ECU.
Mitch Hannes took that South Florida job, so everybody just scattered into the wind.
Yeah. Bieniek, Hail State, they've been a force since the days of Will Clark and Rafael Palmeiro. What are we looking at here? Is this another, or can they make some noise here in the SEC?
Mississippi State is one of those wild card teams to me this season. A lot of the national media likes the Bulldogs for this upcoming season. But I am a little bit lower on the offense. That's what I think. I think there might be their biggest hole this upcoming year. They do return Hunter Hines, but I think there's a lot of question marks everywhere else. Maybe besides Ace Reese, the Houston incoming transfer. But let's go to the pitching because that's my specialty and what I'll be covering on this show. Cal Steven, Jarangelo Sanja, and Nate Dome were all the projected weekend rotation last year. 1, 2, 3. They're all departing. I heard Chris Lemonis on an interview say Pico Khan is maybe how you pronounce his last. I've always said Cone, so I apologize to Pico on the last name pronunciation there. But Khan's probably expected to be their Friday night guy. That's kind of the tone that I was picking up from Lemonis last year. He only threw 29 innings. He had a 3.38 ERA, 35 strikeouts, only 11 walks in 29 innings. He went into the summer, had a great season there as well. Same with Carson Ligon, who was touching 100 in the Cape Cod League this summer. This is a guy who appeared in 15 games, mainly out of the bullpen last season for Mississippi State. 21 strikeouts, 21 walks, and 4.56 ERA. They're in the 23.2 innings, and he got touched up quite a bit. 5.31 Sierra, 8.82 FIP, we'll see if the leap he took that summer is going to come to fruition this spring. And Jacob Pruitt is a really good arm coming in from the Sycamores of Indiana State. 41 innings last year, 57 strikeouts, 23 walks, a 3.02 ERA. That was the second straight year that he's been stellar for the Six. I think the weekend rotation is good enough to get this team to above 500 in the SEC if they can hit. That's the one question I have on the Bulldogs here. Johnny, do you have any more belief than I do in the lineup here?
Mississippi State was one of my main teams last year. They were in my portfolio. I had a lot of money riding on Mississippi State, and listen, the pitching was always the thing that I really loved about them. Durangelo St. John, one of my guys, big incubator guy. Watched him in his first start as a freshman 2 years ago. The jump he made from 23 to 24 was nothing short of sublime. It was one of the best jumps any players made from 23 to 24. But their whole weekend rotation is gone. They lose some bullpen pieces. But, here's the thing. I think their pitching is, again, going to be the strength, like you said. They have some more unknowns. But Pico Cohn showed a lot of plays late last year. And, Carson Ligon was a guy, when he transferred, I thought he was going to be a bigger piece. This was a guy who a few years ago was a mainstay in a really good Miami rotation when Miami was competing, potentially to win the national title. So the pitching, I don't have a problem with it. Listen, I think their pitching staff can be front to back, can be top half of the SEC. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think they're going to be completely dominant, but I think they'll be top half of the SEC with the talent and the potential that they have. I am disgusted with Mississippi State last year. I said I would never bet them again. I couldn't stand Chris Lemonis. Just disgustingly stupid decisions late in games, pinch hitting the wrong guy, pulling the pitcher, wrong pitcher, whatever it was. And the hitting was a disaster. Hunter Hines and Dakota Jordan were the big hitters in this team last season. And they went on an abysmal run late in the year, striking out nonstop. Jordan
got really cold in the postseason there.
And Hines did too. And the only guys that were really there to kind of keep this team somewhat afloat was David Mershon. Was a big plug.
Isaac was clutch in the SEC.
Connor Isaac came up clutch. I don't love the lineup. Dylan Cupp was a guy I thought we were going to see more of last year. I know they're high on him, and the jury's still out. I feel like Dylan Cupp could be a good contributor. I just don't think there's enough juice in this lineup. I don't think they're going to have a guy outside of maybe Hunter Hines that's going to be able to flirt with 25 home runs. They might have a couple guys in the teens. I like Ace Reese coming over from Houston. I think that's a consistent guy that can be plugged into the lineup. I just think when you look at what they have offensively, it's going to echo a lot like last year. Because before Dakota Jordan got ice cold, this kid was like, oh my God, this kid's going to be a top 15 pick. They call him Baby Bo Jackson, freak athlete, tons of power. But I don't see it this year for Mississippi State. Like Bryce Chance, maybe he could be solid. Garrick Frey, Nolan Stevens, Noah Sullivan coming over from USC Upstate. I mean, it's a much different class of play from USC Upstate to the SEC. They might have a couple good contributors. I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to be a serious contender to win it at Omaha or to win the SEC. I have Mississippi State on the back end of the SEC this year. They won 17 games in the SEC last year. I think they'll probably win closer to 11, and their schedule doesn't help either. It's really tough to open up. They got Texas, Oklahoma, LSU in their first three series. I think it's a tough year for Mississippi State.
Yeah, one more name that I wanted to throw out there was Chase Hungate, the Virginia transfer, like Colby mentioned. He's going to be Cam Schulke of last year. Leverage arm, under the table, right-hander. Love it. Virginia used him in some leverage innings last year. He had 2 saves, 37 strikeouts, and as a submariner, he only had 13 walks with that 3.74 ERA. I just think he's going to be one of their top options out of the pen. I love me some sidearm jokers, and that's one that keep your eye on there for the upcoming year.
All right, let's jump on over to the Missouri Tigers. Well, Well, there's only one way to go up. One way you can go, right? Up. Well, I guess technically down. They were 9-21 in the SEC a year ago, 23-32 overall for Carrick Jackson as he enters year 2. They lost Logan Lunsford, Carter Rustad, Trevor Austin, Jackson Beeman, Matt Garcia, Tucker Moore, just it's a slew of other guys too. But they went out. They returned a few guys too, but they also went out in the portal and added, once again, obscure, interesting gets. Keegan Knutson from San Jacinto. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
San Jacinto, I think.
Oh, I don't even know. I never even heard of it. And then
San Jack for short.
Yeah, Connor State, which I've never heard of either. Blake Simpson coming in from Connor State, Columbia College, which not to be confused with the Ivy. Columbia, Caden Nicoletto coming in. Pierre Seals from Memphis. Hey, I've heard of Memphis. And then Danny Ramirez from Seminole State. I mean, why should I buy into them being just second season with Carrick Jackson? Bieniek is. What do you make of this Missouri Tiger team? Do you think they're going to be improved?
No, I don't think so. And honestly, I said it last year, and I haven't moved off of this take. Carrick Jackson to me was one of the weirdest coaching hires of the entire summer last year. He had a losing season at Memphis, got the Missouri job. After 3 years at Southern, one of them was NCAA tournament year after winning the SWAC. But to me, I just haven't seen it from Jackson that really tells me that he's going to have a year above expectation. And expectation for Missouri right now is they're going to be in the cellar. Honestly, the pitching was better than I expected last year. I think there's, if you're looking for some optimism, it is in this pitching staff. Javen Pimentel was a solid arm last year in the SEC. 3.61 ERA, 46 strikeouts, only 15 walks in 42.1 innings. He only had a 2.05 batting average against. Ian Lose is a fifth-year senior, and he threw 29 innings, 31 strikeouts, 11 walks in those 29 innings. And Brock Lucas, a junior, had a 3.62 ERA, 32 strikeouts, 23 walks in 39 innings, and he himself had a 2.15 batting average against. Those three, I think, are one of the more solid trios. I don't think there's an arm that really jumps off the page that this guy's going to absolutely break out for this season, but you know what you're going to get, I think, from those three starters. Will Libbert is a redshirt freshman. Last year, scouting report on him was a low 90s fastball with a changeup slider that were plus pitches. James Vaughn is a graduate senior. He threw 29 innings last year. He had a 7.36 ERA. Just the deeper you get into the staff, it gets, I guess, less typical of an SEC staff. And the lineup is lacking. And last year, it was the detriment to this team having a successful year because the pitching, I think, was good enough to do the job. There's some good pieces that hopefully with some development are going to be a little bit better and more to the league average mean. But Johnny, I don't know what your thoughts are on Missouri here, but I think their bottom half, if they click pitching wise, they could maybe finish 15th like they did last year. But I don't think there's a whole lot of potential with Missouri this year.
Nah, I don't. I mean, Mizzou every year seems like there's these weird weekend series, especially when they're at home, that they somehow pull out a win. And we've seen that the last couple of years. I remember 2 years ago, Dolly in Tennessee, Chase Dollander got roughed up at Mizzou. It was maybe
last year Florida got swept.
Opening weekend, maybe in March. I don't remember, but Mizzou's cold, right? So when it's early in March, when it's cold out there and they're used to playing in that, and teams that are coming from the South aren't, that's where you can create some equity because they're always going to be north of a $2 underdog, especially against these better teams. So like, there's going to be times where I might be interested in taking a piece of Mizzou or maybe grabbing them on the run line or whatever the case may be. But in terms of season overall, like they're going to be bad. I like David Pimentel. He's a guy that, you could pick and choose your spot sometimes to bet him on a weekend rotation, but Mizzou's a fade for me. They've got some talent coming in with Caden Nicoletto, was really good at Columbia. 27 home runs, stands out, 412 average. They got Brady Piccarelli, who is a freshman coming in. Pierce Seals from Memphis. But overall, man, I think Mizzou's is a few years away from really, really competing. And I think they're probably going to have to get a different coach. So they won 9 games in the SEC last year. I'd probably keep them around that. Other than a couple bets here or there on a weekend series, I don't know how they're really gonna compete. I don't. And their schedule's brutal. I don't even.
So they lost their best hitter in Trevor Austin, the 3 pieces offensively that you need or are rooting for a breakout if you want a above standard deviation year for Mizzou. Jackson Levitch, who is one of their best returning bats, a 918 OPS last season. Danny Corona is a piece from that Wake Forest semifinals team 2 years ago, who was kind of all over the place utility-wise, struggled with the strikeout, did again last year as well with Missouri. And then Yadier Hernandez is the sexy name, Yadier Molina's cousin. He's the backstop for Mizzou. But, I think this is the least talented roster in the SEC, which is, absolutely loaded year in and year out.
Yeah, they're not good.
Next up, let's talk about Ole Miss. I love watching Ole Miss, Mississippi State every year. The Egg Bowl, no matter the sport, I feel like subscribe me to it. Ole Miss 27-29 a year ago. Obviously, they won a national championship not that long ago, but rough season ago. 11-19 in the SEC for Mike Bianco, who's 24th season at the helm there. 906 career wins, 543 losses. And the Rebels, they lost some key guys: Andrew Fisher, Ethan Legge, Jackson Ross, Ethan Grove, Liam Doyle, Grayson Salner. But they were active once again. First off, they returned some key guys. I think just the fact that Luke Hill and Braden Randall and Judd Utermark all back. Mitchell Sanford comes in from the Privateers of New Orleans. He was previously at LSU, 60-year senior. You got to like that. Isaac Humphrey coming in from the Louisville Cardinals. Ryan Mormon from the Illini of Illinois. Colin Roeder from BYU and Luke Chang from the Redbirds of Illinois State. All coming in the portal. They also went out and got Will McLaughlin from St. Joe's. Bieniek, I'm curious your take here, and then I gotta follow that up with Hail State or Ole Miss. Who'll be better this year?
I think Mississippi State's going to be better than this year. Ole Miss is in a really, really interesting spot because if you listen or read to anything college baseball wise, huge storyline coming in this year is a lot of people believe that Mike Bianco is on the hot seat. He was on the hot seat during his national championship season in April, then ran the table in May and June to win it as the 64th team in the 64-team field. Once again, I think Ole Miss would be making a mistake if you were to get rid of Bianco because your most success has been with this guy at the helm. So it's a really touchy-feely situation here with Ole Miss. And they've got a really fun freshman coming in, and Owen Pano, number one shortstop from the Northeast in New York. He's a 5-tool guy, 6'3", 205, really projectable talent on the offensive side. And on the pitching side, they get Hunter Elliott back, who in 2022, this kid was stellar. He had surgeries. Missed pretty much 99% of the last 2 years. But in that 2022 season, this is a freshman, by the way, who appeared in 20 games, 270 ERA, 80 innings. He had 102 strikeouts and 34 walks. If we can get any sort of similar Hunter Elliott, then Ole Miss is going to be hard to beat on a Friday. You parlay that into Riley Maddox and Mason Nichols, who are also seniors who do have swing and miss stuff. This could be a really interesting rotation. They bring in Will McCausland from St. Joe's, who's one of the better mid-major starting pitchers last season. And the bullpen is filled with potential. I think there's a lot of guys that, will struggle to throw strikes, I think is the nice way of giving a lot of the scouting report there on this pitching staff. But if Elliott can, show us any of that from 2022, this fall, he was up to 94. It's an elite changeup, nice slider. This is a kid that can go out and get you a game. He's going to be similar to what I would say Jack Caglione was on the pitching side last year. He literally won 7 SEC games when he was on the bump for the Gators. If you can get those 7 and somehow mix and match your way to 6 more, you could be a tournament team. As last year we saw a couple of SEC teams, I think there were 3 that were 13-17 and got into the NCAA tournament. I think that's your resume or your recipe for success this season if you're Mike Bianco and the Rebels, if you're a fan of this team. Johnny, how high are you on the offense here?
Ole Miss is a team that I was struggling with because I'm like, I think talent-wise they have some guys. I just don't know if it's going to be enough here. But obviously it all starts with Owen Pano. This is a guy that in a couple of years we could be hearing his name called very high in the 2027 draft. As you said, very projectable, 5-tool potential. So, if he hits the ground running and he can kind of establish himself as the key presence in that lineup, then you have a couple of other guys that you brought in, an Isaac Humphrey, 10 home runs, 310 average. You have Ryan Moorman, 19 home runs. You have Mitchell Sanford from New Orleans, 15 home runs, 381 average. Other than that, they're going to be really relying heavily on this transfer class to boost up this lineup because the guys that they had from last year that didn't leave, it's really hard to see them being the big contributors that get this done. So it's a lot of what ifs at Ole Miss. Like if Owen Pano is really good and if some of these freshmen really pan out, then yeah, like this lineup can be decent. I think you said it though. Hunter Elliott is huge. This guy was giving me nightmares because I faded Ole Miss, that tournament team, every step of the way, and I was furious that they beat my Oklahoma Sooners that year. I was furious. I'm like, this Ole Miss team, it's just like they had that it factor. Every time they needed to make a play, they made it. Hunter Elliott was a huge reason why. And this guy's missed 2 years, and this guy was projecting a decent draft status. And Hunter Elliott, this is huge for him because Hunter Elliott is like, all right, I had a lot of potential as a freshman. I did great things in the SEC. I won a ring, but now like I need to further my baseball career after college. So this is a contract year for me. Hunter Elliott, like you said, can win a lot of games on Friday nights. The Ole Miss is going to be a team I'm very interested throughout the season to bet in certain situations because they're going to be a big underdog, and especially going against other teams. You catch the wrong team on the wrong night. Hunter Elliott on a Friday night is one of those guys that can definitely make things go awry for another team.
Yeah, Will Furness, DH here too. He's a tank if he can figure out the swing and miss. That's another important piece of the offense. And Luke Hill returns. He was great at Arizona, I believe it was. It was either Arizona or Arizona State in 2023. So
I don't listen. If Ole Miss somehow made a run into the field of 64, it wouldn't surprise me. I think there's too many what ifs. I think they're going to have to rely on crazy performances from like 4 or 5 players between pitching and hitting. I don't know if I see it maybe next year, but Ole Miss is going to be competitive. I think, even though they lost Andrew Fisher and Liam Doyle, 2 big pieces from last year, I still think I see them being feisty, kind of in that Auburn territory.
All right, let's jump over to a team that says one of your darlings a few years back, the Oklahoma Sooners, who won the Big 12 a season ago, first year in the SEC. They were 40-21 last year, 23-7 in the Big 12. Skip Johnson in the 7th season there, he's 229 and 153. The Sooners, they lose what? Michael Snyder, Bryce Madron, Jackson Nicholas, John Spikerman, Braden Davis, Brendan Girton, Grant Stevens, Carson Atwood, Carter Campbell, all those guys are no longer in the red and white. They go out and bring in some big time recruits. Kyle Branch coming in. I know they're excited about him. Andrew Dickerson. And then the transfer portal, they go out and bring in Trey Gamble from Salt Lake Community College, Sam Christensen from South Mountain Community College, Braden Horton from the Flaming Libs of Liberty, Dayton Taki from Weatherford College, Brandon Kane from Mississippi Gulf Coast, and Dawson Willis from LSU. Bieniek, your thoughts on how, just in general, like I want to know about the team, but also how do you think Oklahoma and Texas will fit into this brand new, conference that they're in?
I think Oklahoma could really screw everything up. I present to you, if you like Kentucky style of baseball from last year, I present to you Oklahoma. And they live by the motto chaos, because it truly is their version of chaos. It's a lot of speed. They'll run the base pass very aggressively. They're not going to live by the long ball. Their ballpark doesn't allow them to play for the home run. And on the pitching side, they are elite. Kyson and Malachi Witherspoon, the two brothers there, are really projectable. Kyson is like one of the best returning pitchers in the entire country this upcoming year. He had 90 strikeouts last year, 371 ERA and 80 innings, 373 Sierra. Malachi was more of a reliever last year. He only appeared in 22.1 innings. He had a 564 ERA, 29 strikeouts, 10 walks. Cameron Johnson is another projectable left-handed pitcher. Last year as a freshman at LSU, he really just was kind of blocked, didn't get many opportunities. Also, he struggled to throw strikes. So he transfers out of LSU, comes into Oklahoma here for this upcoming year. Unfortunately, I did not write that on the sheet for Colby. But Cam Johnson, big piece from the transfer portal. Jamie Hitt was another important arm from last season. Those two, also Cade Crossland, are going to be competing for a third and fourth rotation spot. Crossland is a very interesting left-handed arm strike thrower out of Weatherford College. He's a piece that they are very high on as well. So it's tough to kind of get a read on who would be the Saturday, who would be the Sunday guy, but this is a very deep, very good Oklahoma pitching staff. Dylan Crick's the brother of Jimmy, who was on that 2022 College World Series team for the Sooners. He's a senior now. He appeared in 30.2 innings last season. He had a sub 1.2 whip, 20 strikeouts, only 3 walks. He's a nice piece in that bullpen as well. The offense isn't sexy, but I think it is good enough to get the job done. It's going to be a very similar recipe to what Kentucky did last year in the SEC. I think if there was a dark horse that comes out of not even top 25 ranked in the country for this preseason by D1 baseball, I think Oklahoma could make that jump into the top 5, compete to win a title in the SEC. So hopefully that answered the question, Colby, because it's just going to be tough. That's the plain and simple answer. There's no weekends off in the SEC like you could get 1 or 2 with the Big 12, especially with the realignment there. It created a lot more opportunities. But Oklahoma, I have them kind of right in the middle. NCAA tournament team, one of the better teams in the SEC from the pitching side of things. And if everything clicks offensively, this is a team that I think can compete. Johnny, something tells me that you might not be as high on the Sooners. And it could be very well because of the offense. It doesn't have a whole lot of pop. What are your thoughts here?
I was actually down on the Sooners last year in that regional against Duke. I was shocked that Duke kind of just tightened up and couldn't play, and Oklahoma was able to squeak through that Norman region. And, listen, I think it's interesting now because we're talking about one of the 2 teams that transferred from the Big 12 to the SEC. The talent jump as a conference is sizable. I mean, the Big 12 is a solid conference. I don't think it's anything sexy. There's some good teams, but now this is a different level of play. I like Oklahoma this year. I think Oklahoma is going to be a middle of the road SEC team. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team. They're a team that can definitely win a region again. I like Oklahoma. I like Skip Johnson. He always seems to have good pitching. This is if you want to be a pitcher and go to college, Oklahoma's Skip Johnson's program, like this is one of the top programs that you can go to. You said it. Kyson Witherspoon is one of the top pitchers in the country this year. He's going to be one of the top college pitchers off the board this summer. And so as a Friday guy, you need that kind of projectability, that kind of reliability. That is what Kyson Witherspoon is. Malachi Witherspoon, I don't know if I'm going to see that Saturday role be something that is consistent throughout the year. I have my reservations there. Cam Johnson, I'm very high on. I loved Cam Johnson coming in last year as a freshman at LSU. And like you said, he got blocked, and the rare opportunities he did get, he couldn't throw strikes, but this kid is a tank. He's like 6'5", 250 plus, huge, live arm. If he can kind of get that command under control, Skip Johnson fixes that like he's done with other guys, like he did with Cade Horton. He resurrected Cade Horton's career into a top 10 pick a few years ago. Cam Johnson is a guy that is going to be a very live dark horse to be one of the best Sunday guys in the sport this year. I'm huge on him. And, you're bringing some other guys, Cade Crossland from Weatherford College, Dylan Tate from Jefferson, Missouri, Flamethrower, Bo Sampson from Salt Lake City transfer. Like there's going to be pitching for Oklahoma. It wouldn't surprise me if they're going to be 6-7 arms deep when it's all said and done. Right now, outside of Witherspoon, the question is the rotation. But I think they're going to figure it out. Offensively, kind of like that Kentucky team. They don't wow you. They do a lot of the small things and they don't beat themselves. They're going to steal on you all day long. That's what helped make them be a team that was just short of winning the College World Series a few years ago. Expect them to be one of the highest base stealing teams in the country. Speed transfers, that doesn't change regardless of conference. Listen, they're bringing in some guys. They're bringing in Trey Gambili from Salt Lake City as well, 373 average, 9 home runs. You got Sam Christensen, redshirt sophomore, South Mountain Community College, 307 average, only 4 home runs. But, listen, you're not going to be a team that's going to be hitting a ton of home runs this year. You bring in some guys. It's a big transfer class for the offense. I think Oklahoma's going to be good. They're going to figure it out, and they have a fantastic head coach. And again, like they have a good litmus test early in their schedule. They have the Carbach Round Rock Classic. They're going to face Minnesota, Oregon State, UVA. They have Dallas Baptist early March. They have a series with Sam Houston, and they have a midweek with Louisiana Tech right before conference play starts. South Carolina, Mississippi State, Alabama, LSU, Vandy, Mizzou, Georgia, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Texas to finish off. This is a schedule that is not that bad in the SEC. So I can realistically see Oklahoma being like a 17-win team in this conference. I don't think they're going to win it, but they're going to be competitive, and they're going to be a team that is definitely going to be bettable throughout the year.
Yeah, Easton Carmichael, best returning offensive piece, 126 WRC plus from last year, 969 OPS, and the shortstop battle is really interesting. Jackson Willits was the leader in vibes above replacement for me as a freshman. He wore number 77, my number. That's my guy. And then Dawson Willis, the incoming transfer from LSU Eunice, stole 54 bases. Skip Johnson had to have been drooling when recruiting this kid. 329 batting average, 1030 OPS. If he's getting on base, he's running, much like a lot of these guys on this roster. Colby?
Let's jump on over to the South Carolina Gamecocks. I feel like last week we had someone in the chat that was saying that they were a fan, but they're not high on this season. A lot of it, Mark Kingston gone, and they bring in Paul Maneri. I'm curious just in general what you make of that hire, but also if you're looking at the roster point of view, they did have a slew of guys, leave. Cole Messina, Gavin, how do I pronounce that? Casas. I'm probably butchering that. Cassis. Dalton Reeves. Yeah. Parker Nolan, Dylan Brewer, Eli Jones, Chris Veach, all gone. They did go out and bring in Georgia transfer Jarvis Evans. They brought in a slew of Clemson transfers. How about that? And Nathan Hall and Nolan Nalraki. it's just, I don't know how I feel about Clemson transfers to South Carolina. Dalton Mashore from St. Mary's coming in there. Henry, I don't know from Ohio State, and Ohio State transfer there. Yeah, I can't read right now. Caden Gaskin from Northwest Florida State. Just a slew of transfers coming in, but what do you make of everything going on in Columbia?
Yeah, there's quite an interesting discourse, I think, around the hire of Paul Mainieri. This guy's in his high 60s, maybe even might be 70 by first pitch of this season, I believe. But he's been out of the game for a handful of years, I think since 2021. He got out of it due to health reasons. I believe he was having trouble with migraines, and that was the entire year. Like the last year was kind of his send off and all that. And it was a big deal because, LSU had been good under him, but they really didn't break through on the national scene as much as LSU fans would have liked. And I think South Carolina fans were hoping for a little bit of a bigger splash, as they do believe they're one of the bigger brands in college baseball. Mainieri, I think, is going to be like your face of the program, but Monty Lee is the guy that was able to keep the entire roster together. He was the recruiting coordinator for a lot of these kids, both the freshmen and the guys that are currently on this roster. I think that was a huge haul in returning him. Monty Lee was the former Clemson head coach. So just your explanation for Nolan Naraki and Nathan Hall coming on the squad here. But This roster is good enough to win in the SEC, and I'll start with the pitching. That's what I'm choosing to cover here. Eli Jersenbeck is a guy. He had Tommy John surgery in the 2023-24 season that caused him to miss the 24 season. Sorry. 16 appearances as a freshman, 284 ERA, 36 strikeouts, 6 walks, and 31.2 innings. This kid's a dude. And from everything that I'm reading, it sounds like this guy's going to be hopping right back onto the saddle as the number one for this team. And they missed that last year. Last year, they had plenty of depth, but they didn't really have a guy, as they lose Eli Jones. He was the Friday night starter, but he wasn't really like the automatic win that you're looking for. Dylan Eskew's a returning starting pitcher from last year, through 62.2 innings. He had a 4.60 ERA. Roman Kimball has an electric arm, kind of just has to find the strike zone. 31 innings last year, 6.32 ERA, 32 walks, so more than a walk per inning. Jake McCoy and Matthew Becker are two lefties that I really love that are either going to be in the rotation or important pieces in the bullpen there. Both inflated ERAs from last year, but I think they have some good stuff, some movement on the pitches there. And then Parker Malott is an interesting piece. And Jarvis Evans transfers in from Georgia as another left-hander. That'll be an important bullpen option for Mainieri in his first year in Columbia. But there are some interesting pieces on the offensive side here too, Johnny. Why don't you get into that?
Yeah, listen, I think South Carolina it's a tough team because it's like kind of in that boat where there's talent and they can be good, but so many things I feel like have to come together. And the thing that I'm probably most concerned with is Paul Mainieri coming in. I mean, Mark Kingston was a good coach, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and he wasn't living up to it. But talent-wise, I think the pitching is the most interesting thing because you look at their staff, they're all older guys. They're all juniors or seniors or redshirt sophomores or sixth-year guys. And that plays. That's why a team like NC State was able to make a run last year because most of their team was old. Eli Jersenbeck, you hit the nail on the head. I enjoyed betting on him a couple of years ago before his injury. He is a dog. He's a guy that we talked about this, especially in the SEC. You need a Friday night guy that you can count on. And if Jersenbeck responds from his injury well, he can definitely be that. Roman Kimball is electric if he can find it. I mean, Roman Kimball looks like the second coming of Roy Oswalt if he could ever find, the strike zone. Dylan Eskew's got some talent. I think he could be a decent Saturday guy in the SEC. Jake McCoy is somebody that I would like to see, taking a step forward. 12 appearances last year, he had a 7.88 ERA, but his ERA suggests he was unlucky as it was a 4.55. Matthew Becker, same kind of situation, a 6.6 ERA, but a 2.77 Sierra, appeared in 21 games. Like, there's a lot of talent on this South Carolina staff. They kind of have to just put it together. And offensively, they're led by Ethan Petrie. Ethan Petrie has gotten a lot of disrespect this year. 2 years ago, this guy, it was him, it was Jace Lavalette, it was Jack Caglione as the guys that were going to headline the next couple drafts. Ethan Petrie preseason last year was a top 5 name, top 10. This year, on all these mocks I'm seeing, he's outside the top 15. He's outside the top 20. In some cases, he's at the end of the first round. I'm like, I don't know if these people have actually watched Ethan Petrie. Ethan Petrie is a guy who absolutely should be a top 10 pick this year if he can stay healthy and do what he's done the last 2 years. This kid is a monster, 6'6", 245 plus, athletic, plays the outfield, has tons of power, translates to the next level. This is the guy that's got to be a monster this year. This is why he's a Golden Spikes front runner on Bet Rivers at 13-1. He's got to be nearing 30 home runs, 350 plus average. He is the tone setter in this lineup. The thing that worries me is there's not a ton of power in this lineup. And I get concerned the fact that I don't know if it's going to be a team that's going to be batting in the 315 territory as a team. The lineup gives me some concerns despite the transfers. But if Ethan Petrie is the guy, like he is and like he can be, and some of these other guys contribute, South Carolina is going to be a surprising team. I'm not buying it right now. I want to see it in real time. They're going to be a team I'm going to be interested in taking a look at and keeping an eye on throughout the season. And to tell you the truth, their schedule is interesting. They open up with Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi State, A&M, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, LSU to close. That's the other problem. What do they look like in their conference schedule? Because it is a tough schedule. But there will be times that you can bet them throughout the year. Maybe they surprise us, Noah.
Colby, you're muted.
My apologies. Yeah, sorry about that. I had a cough earlier. Let's talk about our darlings my darlings from a season ago. The Tennessee Volunteers, Tony Vitello, 8th season here, 295 and 112. They were 60-13 a season ago, 22-8 within the SEC as they won the SEC championship. I mean, this team was the real deal last year. Great watch. They do lose a slew of guys off that team. I think the big one, I mean, there's several big ones, but Drew Beam gone, Christian Moore gone, Blake Burke, Dylan Dreiling, just a slew of guys. There's more than that too. Now they did go heavy in the portal in the pitching staff here, bringing in Liam Doyle from Ole Miss, Brandon Arvison from San Jacinto, right? San Jacinto. Tanner Franklin from Kennesaw State, the Owls, and then Michael Sharman from Georgia Highlands. Also bringing in Andrew Fisher from Ole Miss and Gavin Killen from Louisville. Hey, you got Cannon Peoples back. You got Dalton Bargo back. Dean Curley. I mean, the crowd is always great there. Bieniek, I think you hinted at you're not high or as high. You look to fade these Volunteers this year. Tell me why.
Well, I would say I'm still relatively high. I still have them as a top 10 team, but it's not necessarily because I believe in a lot of the talent on this roster. I believe in the coaching staff, and that was the same handicap as we had last year. As the starting rotation and the bullpen had lost a lot of production from that 2023 team, and going into the 24, it's pretty much the same thing from 24 to 25. I'm going to say the same handicap. I believe in Frank Anderson and being able to develop pitching. At this time last year, when we were previewing Tennessee, we were going through all these names left and right. Drew Beam going to be the Friday night starter, and then boom, all of a sudden AJ Russell is your Friday night starter, and he looks like a fucking superstar, but he had injury issues the entire year. So my entire synopsis of why I even bring that up is I don't know if we're really seeing or a lot of the fall reports, what we're getting is truly transparent from Tennessee coming into this year. Liam Doyle is reportedly going to be the top starter. I'm not like a huge Doyle apologist. I'll say that. 72 strikeouts, 18 walks, and 45 innings. It's an electric arm, great stuff. But I don't know if like he's going to be a successful Friday starter. He had a 6.35 ERA last year for Ole Miss. He had his moments. He had a really good start in the SEC tournament, but I don't know if I really want to buy that as your number one in the SEC. Nate Snead was a reliever last year. He had a 10-2 record coming in games that were either tied or they were losing in, and he was able to just lock it down for the Vols. 75 innings, 3.11 ERA, 61 strikeouts, 26 walks. Brandon Arvidsson's an interesting piece out of San Jacinto. He started his career at Texas A&M, wasn't really successful, then goes to the JUCO route. Now we see him with Tennessee. Who knows what's going to happen here? They also have really, just flame ballers in the bullpen. Marcus Phillips has a great four-seamer that can get up into the high 90s, good cutter. Tanner Franklin is a really projectable arm, a transfer in from Kennesaw State. He had some good starts here and there. One that comes to mind was against Clemson last year. And Andrew Banky is a funky left-hander in the bullpen that is returning from last year's team. So I think the pitching staff, I'm betting on Frank Anderson to, progress and develop these guys throughout the season. And this is going to be a team that's going to be better come May than it is maybe in February. And also Tony Vitello gets the most out of his position players. He himself, an infielder, great recruiter. I think there's a plethora of guys he could turn to on this year's roster that will be able to give him some production, whether or not it will be able to match. I mean, they lost Christian Moore, Blake Merck, Dylan Dreiling, Kavaris Tears, Billy Amick, 5 guys that easily could have been first rounders last year. It's going to be tough to replace. That's why I'm not as high as I was last year, because I could bank on that offense. This year, you're going to have to take a little bit more bets on some guys that haven't had the opportunities because they've been blocked by that stellar class that just graduated. You can hear from Johnny on some of those guys that maybe they'll decide to turn to here. So take the ball, Johnny V.
Defending national champions, the gold standard of college baseball. This team is simply sensational year in, year out. And, listen, winning the national championship is great, but when it comes time to pay the tab the next year, it's a tough turnaround. You lose some of the best names in college. You lose guys that are going to be stars in the pros. Christian Moore. I was talking about Durangelo earlier about the guy that made one of the biggest jumps from 23 to 24. And it's not to say, Moore was great in 23, but he was on a different level in 24. College World Series hero, Blake Burke, the jump he made as well is off the hook. Billy Amick, these are 3 guys that are basically first rounders last year. And the fact is, you got gutted pitching as well. We didn't even talk about the fact that A.J. Russell had Tommy John. He might not even pitch this year. We don't know what's going on with A.J. Russell, who's easily their best arm. A.J. Russell's a first-round kind of guy if he stays healthy with the stuff that he has. Liam Doyle, I am not that high on. I think he will be solid in this role. He is not a Friday night guy in the SEC. This is a guy that struggled 2 years ago at Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt in the weekend rotation. He was not that great for Ole Miss a season ago. He had a couple good starts here and there. Can he improve under Frank Anderson? Absolutely. Tennessee is one of the five best schools to go for if you want to be a pitcher in college. Nate Snead, great stuff, clutch, but he was a reliever. Let's see him step up being a starter. I think he's going to succeed, but there's going to be the issues kind of like I felt like Gabe Gackle a little bit. Gabe Gackle's better, but the endurance. What do you look like second, third time through the order? Brandon Arvidsson coming over from San Jacinto College. We don't even know what he looks like in a legitimate conference. Tegan Coons, who's a freshman. There's a lot of what ifs on this pitching staff, especially without A.J. Russell. I think it's going to be worked on. But like Noah said, it's going to take time. It wouldn't surprise me if they struggle in the first half of the season. So in the meantime, they're going to look to their retooled lineup like nobody else can build, like Tony V. That's what they do. They replenish. And they start with Gavin Killen from Louisville. Kid was a star last year, batted .330, 9 home runs, 23 doubles, probably a first rounder this year, probably maybe in the teens, low 20s. Andrew Fisher from Ole Miss. This is a guy that's not getting enough first round helium that I think is going to be there. He hit 17 home runs last year. I probably see him cracking over 25, especially in that ballpark. 282 average. I think that's probably going to be up in the 330s this year. Love Andrew Fisher. Love killing 2 huge transfers. Cannon Peebles, can he be the guy? 2 years ago, he was a star at Clemson. Got buried in the depth chart at Tennessee.
NC State.
NC State. You're right. NC State. He was a star with Jacob Kozart, but he got buried in the depth chart here at Tennessee. Wasn't great in the opportunities he was given. Now, can he step up and be the guy who was projected as a first rounder 2 years ago? Dean Curley, another guy that could be a first rounder. When I talked to Joe Doyle, he said Dean Curley is one of the biggest guys he's high on this year to take that next jump as a full-time starter in this Tennessee lineup. There's a lot of talent. They're going to hit. They're going to be one of the best. Tennessee is still in my bucket of tier 1 teams. I think the pitching on paper right now is a little bit of a concern, but I'm going to count on it getting straightened out. Tennessee is not a team I'm going to bet to win the SEC. I bet them last year and won. I just think there's a roster-wise better top to bottom, especially in the pitching department with LSU and Texas A&M. But rest assured, Tennessee is going to be up there. They're going to be a threat to win the title or at least get back there again.
Let's jump on over and talk about one of the more interesting teams, the new SEC edition besides Oklahoma, the Texas Longhorns. Obviously a lot of drama regarding Jim Schlossnagle coming in from A&M, pairing up with the AD again. He was previously at TCU, but the Longhorns were 36-20. He inherits a team that was 36-24 a year ago, 20-10 in the Big 12. That was third best. And they lose LeBaron Johnson, Bieniek's boy, Charlie Hurley, Jared Thomas, Peyton Powell, Porter Brown, all gone. The thing is, though, man, I can't wait for this team when they just in general. I think they're kind of must watch, just with the new conference, and then you add in the drama behind that. But they went out in the portal. They brought in Ethan Mendoza from Arizona State, Easton Winfield from ULM. They also brought in Jared Spencer from Indiana State. Like I said, Indiana State's entire team on the SEC rosters, but Cade Bing from McLennan College, Grayson Saunier from Ole Miss transfers in, Roger Rojas from UTSA, Thomas Burns, another Arizona State Sun Devil transfer. They return a bunch of production as well. Ryan Galvin, Adrian Martinez is a freshman they're super excited about. Bieniek, I am fascinated by this story. I was fascinated back when this happened. I'm kind of fascinated by watching Texas and Oklahoma, really, but specifically Texas, and see how Schlossnagle does in Austin, especially those matches with the Aggies. So, your thoughts on the Longhorns?
I love this team. That might be a little bit more of a hotter take, but I have trouble kind of fitting this team into the top teams in the SEC, because I think they can contend for a title. I do like other rosters, but Jim Schlossnagle is one of the best coaches in the country, and I think this is similar to that 2022 Texas A&M team where he inherits some pieces, but he really did pretty well in the portal, in my opinion. On the pitching staff side of things, they return Ace Whitehead and Max Grubbs, 2 guys that were weekend starters from last season. They get Thomas Burns, who was Arizona State's Friday night guy to begin last year as a freshman. And what I'm hearing and reading is these guys are a little bit buried on the depth chart. So that tells me that this is going to be a good pitching staff. And when Max Wiener and Jim Schlossnagle have good pitching staffs, we've seen what they did both last year and in 2022, just with average staffs, and they were piecing together the bullpen. I think that's going to be a very similar set of circumstances for this upcoming year. Jared Spencer is very intriguing arm because he didn't start many games with Indiana State in his 3 years. I believe he only started 11, but he's going to be the Friday night guy. He's it's a difficult arm angle from the left side for a lot of hitters. At Indiana State last season, he struck out 72 batters, only walked 33 in 53 innings. He was 6-0 in all appearances. He did not suffer a loss. 4.08 ERA there. Batting average against was just 216. I think he's going to be able to translate pretty well into the SEC as a Friday night guy. Luke Harrison's an interesting read when I was looking into him because he didn't appear much at all last year. He had a 9.28 ERA, but from everything that I was looking into, he was going to be in the starting rotation. He had made some really big jumps this offseason. Cade Bing, the lefty from McLennan, was 9-2 in 70 innings with 75 strikeouts, only 12 walks. This kid's a strike thrower, had a 3.33 ERA, and the complete opposite of Cade Bing is Grayson Saunier, an explosive arm that has had his struggles finding the strike zone in his 2 years at Ole Miss. So he only threw 44 innings last year. He had a 5.64 ERA, 35 strikeouts, but I think this pitching staff's going to play, and they have the Big 12 Player of the Year in Max Ballou. They have Kimball Schuessler as a catcher. They have Rylan Galvin as a catcher. They have some really good catcher depth there. Jalen Flores, the returning shortstop. Will Gasparino took a huge step in the summer, so he's supposed to have a much better sophomore year, is what I'm hearing. And Easton Winfield is a really fun UL Monroe transfer that followed Schloss from A&M to Texas. I like this Longhorns team. I think they can be a top 5 team in the SEC for this upcoming season, Johnny.
I'm with you. I love Texas as well. This was a team that I liked a lot, especially after Jim Schlossnagle left, because I watched them a lot last year and I loved their roster. And, it's crazy because they lost so much talent. They lost Jared Thomas and Porter Brown. Those are the two biggest guys they lost. And, LeBaron Johnson, I think a lot of us were expecting him to really take the step up last year. He was so good 2 years ago, and I thought last year he was going to solidify himself as one of the 7 or 8 best arms in all of college, potentially as a first rounder last summer. But, Jim Schlossnagle coming over ruffled a lot of feathers, but this guy's a great coach. Brought Max Wiener with him, pitching coach, fantastic. Knows how to create a lot of talent and growth in pitching staffs. Start with the arms. Jared Spencer, very good at Indiana State. Cade Bing, Grayson Saunier. Thomas Burns is a guy I'm really excited about. I watched him a little bit at Arizona State last year. I thought this guy's got a lot of juice, and I was excited to see him come over. And then buried on the depth chart is Max Grubbs and Ace Whitehead. 2 guys who were pretty solid in starts last year. Made some big starts, had some good outings. So I think this pitching staff can be very good and very deep. Maybe on paper at the moment they don't have the guy who is going to be one of the top arms in the country, but they just have a lot of strong talent. They're probably going to be 6-7 arms deep. Offensively, love Max Ballou. Love him. First rounder. My Golden Spikes pick coming out. So if you saw that on my Twitter, this is one of my 3 favorite Golden Spikes bets this year is Max Ballou. The strikeouts are a bit of a problem, and coming over into the SEC, is a little bit concerning, but the talent this kid has, I think honestly, a lot of people are taking the Cape numbers where he struck out a lot so far into consideration, a small sample size. At the end of the year, he was probably just gassed from playing a long season. Will Gasparino is a guy that can be an absolute horse, freak athlete, 6'6", playing center field. He didn't do that well last year. Expecting him to take the jump under Jim Schlossnagle. Jalen Flores, another big bat in this lineup. They brought in Easton Winfield, Ethan Mendoza. There's a lot of talent on this Texas team. Texas is not in that tier 1 I had, but I have them in that tier 2 with Georgia and UNC, teams that I definitely think can win the College World Series. I'm not sold on a couple things, but I think it can be corrected. Texas, I'm huge on. I don't think they're going to win the SEC. I honestly right now have them right in that Arkansas range, right outside the top 5. I think the conference adjustment could be a little much to start. But to be honest, start out with Mississippi State. They have LSU, Mizzou, Georgia, Kentucky, Auburn, Texas A&M at the end of April. Then to close out the month of May, Arkansas, Florida, Oklahoma. I think the newcomer factor has me a little bit more down on them in terms of the SEC. But overall, in the College World Series landscape, they're one of my top 10 teams for sure.
Yeah, a name that I forgot to mention on the pitching side. I don't know how I did this, but Ruger Riojas is the most exciting piece they have. They are very excited about Riojas. He's an explosive arm out of UTSA. They're comparing him to Chris Cortez, who was just crazy for A&M last season, but he was projectable his first 2 years, then took a huge leap his final year at A&M. Riojas is probably going to be a huge leverage arm, maybe even the closer for Texas this season. So I wanted to mention that.
Well, let's talk about the arch rivals, because Michael Early taking over for Schlossnagle at A&M. 53-15 at the Aggies were a year ago, 19-11 in the SEC, and boy, did they give us a great run. They lose not only Schlossnagle, they lose Braden Montgomery, Jackson Appel, Ted Burton. Chris Cortez, Evan Aschenbeck, just a slew of guys. There's more than that, but they bring in Texas Tech transfer Gavin Kosh. I know they're excited about him. Matt Bergevin from Fairfield, the Stags up in Connecticut there. Bear Harrison coming in from St. Mary's in the Bay Area there after a great freshman season there. Wyatt Hensler from the Quakers of Penn. Jacob Galloway from USC, and then Jamal George from Alabama State. Miles Patton from the Dirtbags of Long Beach State, and Clayton Freshcorn from McLennan as well. I just expect regression just off the coaching and some of the personnel, but kind of must watch to me. Just like I said, I'm just very excited to see this rivalry spice up now that they're back in the same conference. Bieniek, A&M, your thoughts?
I think this is the sexiest roster on paper in the entire country. They're go big or go home on offense. There's a lot of power, but there's a lot of swing and miss. Michael Early being a hitting coach guy, that's kind of his foundation of how he's come up through the ranks. Maybe we can figure something out with the swing and miss on the strikeout side, but overall, I don't think that's like a huge hinder in general, just because lately in the SEC, home runs have gotten you to big places, whether it be in conference or nationally, because if you can't hit the long ball, it's just you haven't really been a winning program the last couple of years since COVID, basically. So yeah, the offense is sexy. The pitching staff is a little bit less sexy, but there's a lot of pitchability here that I love. Ryan Prager, Justin Lampkin are two guys that are returning from last year that are expected to be starters. Ryan Prager, Friday night starter, was excellent last year, 2.95 ERA and 97.2 innings. He had 124 strikeouts, only 20 walks. If you look under the hood, the stats are good. The Sierra and the batting average against and the FIP are all great, but some scouts really kind of poked holes and nitpicked at what Prager did last year in the SEC, which I think was he had an incredible year. But I mean, obviously the money wasn't great enough. I think he was picked in the third round by the Angels. He decides to come back with the NIL that A&M was offering him, and they were half expecting that, half prepared for him to leave. They went out and got Miles Patton out of Long Beach State, and now all of a sudden their entire rotation's full of lefties, and Caden Wilson's number 4 behind him. I've loved Patton as a dirtbag, and he's got a 3.26 ERA. He had 85 strikeouts in the Big West, only 24 walks in 66 innings there, and he was tough to hit. And the big question, I guess, with this rotation is just, if there's a team with a lot of right-handed hitting, that could be possibly a bad matchup for an entire weekend for the Aggies, and could be tough to overcome. But Josh Stewart is expected to take a huge step up in role out of that bullpen. He was huge in the postseason. 296 ERA last year, 39 strikeouts, 9 walks, and 31.2 innings. And then Brad Rudis returns after playing a pretty big role out of the pen from last season. My biggest bugaboo with Texas A&M just the entire offseason was whether or not I was going to be bullish on them with Michael Early, being a first-time head coach. And it was something that I had to really juggle for quite a bit, whether or not I'd put this much expectations on them and whether or not I would be bold enough to not pick them number one in the SEC, number one in the country. But I think the roster is so good because last year it was a player-led team. They had a manager who was checked out in mid-May, and they made a run all the way to the College World Series finals. Schloss was talking to the AD of Texas, Del Conte there, and they kind of knew that the move was going to happen at the end of the year. He had a whole plan of taking the entire coaching staff and this lineup to Austin. And you know what? The players said, no, we kind of make the team here. And I think the manager's not really going to matter too much in year number one because they were so player-led last season. So a lot of good SEC managers were first-time head coaches once upon a time. I look at Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt. Gosh, why am I blanking on all these names now? Florida's manager, Auburn's manager, Vanderbilt's manager, and Georgia's manager all started with no head coaching experience, and all of them have had great years so far in the SEC. I don't see why Michael Early could not get off the ground running with walking into the best situation out of any of those guys that I attempted to just name right there.
I love Texas A&M. You've listened to the show as long as it's been. Texas A&M is one of my top teams this year. It's them, LSU, Virginia as my three favorite teams, the three teams that I'm betting. 11-1, 10-1 everywhere, correct price. Here's the thing. I love Texas A&M, and I was so impressed that this whole thing was this close to blowing up when Schlossnagle left right after the College World Series loss. Like, it was so close. Lavalette was gone. Grahovac was gone. All these guys were leaving. And like you said, the players gathered together and be like, no, we're staying. Michael Early convinced them to stay. And he was rewarded for it. Look at the roster he has. This roster is unbelievable. I mean, the big thing is it hurt them at the time by losing Braden Montgomery in the Super Regional to Oregon. But as a team, it helped them develop because now they realize, okay, like Braden Montgomery is a superstar. This guy could have been a top 3, top 5 pick if he didn't break his ankle, but we were able to play and do it without him. So now what do? You bring in Wyatt Hensler from UPenn, the all-time Ivy League home run leader. Kid's a stud. You bring in Gavin Cash from Texas Tech. This kid is a potential first-rounder this year. He was wasting his talent away in Texas Tech in their uncompetitive program. Jace Lavalette, I've watched this kid as a freshman. The college Matt Olson, this kid should be the number 1 pick this summer. A freak, Gavin Grahovac, who's going to be a top 5 pick next summer. Caden Sorrell was key last year. Hayden Schott can come back if he plays through the torn meniscus and is good. Caden Kent was big down the stretch. Bear Harrison and Matt Bergevin are 2 transfers that I'm curious about to see how they fit in. But, I mean, with the amount of talent in this lineup, not to mention Jamal George from Alabama State, Jacob Galloway from USC, there's so much talent on this lineup, so much depth. It's going to be a nightmare for opposing pitchers. Pitching-wise, you said it, Ryan Prager coming back was huge. That guy was nails. That guy was a top 5 pitcher in the country last year. Reliable every single Friday night. He was going to go out there and battle, give your team a chance to win, and he did more than give his team a chance to win every single Friday. Justin Lampkin was good for the first half of the season, struggled in the middle, and then kind of got it together. A lot of talent. Draft year, Lampkin could be a guy that sneaks up draft boards, if he realizes his potential. He's got a good arsenal, kind of a 3/4 sidearm, mid-90s fastball, good slider. So I'm expecting a lot from Lampkin. Miles Patton, Long Beach State, heard a lot of good things about him. I didn't watch a lot of Long Beach State last year, but I read some reports, watched some highlight film, and, listen, if they're slotting him in on the Sunday, it's huge. And it sucks because Shane Tadeo was going to be such a big part of this rotation. He got Tommy John. Chances are he's probably not going to pitch in the regular season.
Yeah,
maybe
he's missing the entire year.
He's not going to come back for the College World Series even if they made it.
No.
Yeah, probably not. But a lot of bullpen arms. They're going to be 6 arms deep, 7 arms deep. The talent is there. It's whether in the key moments, the intangibles, the finger on the pulse thing, can Michael Early deal with that? I think they're going to be able to. I love me Texas A&M this year, along with LSU. This is a 2-unit play. I gave it out at 6-1. I think the Aggies are going to fly. I'm expecting them even in the SEC. I think they're probably going to be able to win about 23 games. Considering what they start with, open up with Bama, Vanderbilt in the 3rd week of March. I'm going to that series, by the way. Kentucky. Then they got Tennessee, South Carolina. They go with Arkansas, Texas, LSU. Tough middle of the road there. Mizzou. And then they close out with Georgia. I still think this is a team that can win 23 games. Look out for Texas A&M, bro. I have so much hypothetical money wrapped up with them.
Yeah, just on the managers that I couldn't even name. Tony Vitello at Tennessee, another guy that jumped in at Tennessee and pretty much won right away. And Nick Mingione made the NCAA tournament in year 1 with Kentucky to go along with Kevin O'Sullivan from Florida, Wes Johnson at Georgia. It's just something that I feel like I was worrying a little bit too much about, looking a little bit deeper into it. So, yeah, Michael Early, best situation out of anybody as a first-time manager. I think the Aggies will be just fine going into this year. You're muted again, Colby.
All right, my apologies. Let's talk about the last team on the slate here. Last but not least, that is the Vanderbilt Commodores. 38-23 a season ago. 17 in the SEC for Tim Corbin, who's entering his 21st season. 921 wins, 443 losses. They lose Bryce Cunningham, Carter Holton, Devin Futrell, Davis Diaz, Alan Espinal. So they're taking some hits, but they go out, they bring in some transfers. And this is one I should highlight. We talked about the ACC one last week, and some of these academic institutions, it's very hard for them to take advantage of the transfer portal.
Yep.
But they were able to do it somewhat. Just going out and bringing in a Georgetown transfer and Cody Bowker, a Stanford transfer and Tommy O'Rourke, a slew of other transfers. Dayton Flyers, David Mendez coming in, catcher Mac Rose from McLennan. Surprise, there's a ton of McLennan transfers. Kobe Croft from South Carolina Upstate. Just a slew of guys that are going to fit in this roster. I don't know how, because they really can't look at the same amount of players. A&M or Texas or LSU, they have to be very creative with the transfers they get. That's why you're seeing Stanford and Georgetown and some of these other ones. Bieniek, what do you think the doors will be like this year?
Well, I can tell you this: coaches are saying "woe's me" to Corbin and Vanderbilt because for years they had a little bit more of a recruiting edge because of the academic standards and whatnot, and they were able to spread around their scholarship money much easier than a lot of the other teams. So Vanderbilt's come back to the pack, and it's pretty evident offensively the last couple of years as they when I was talking about just home runs have kind of carried the day for teams in the SEC standings. Vanderbilt is like the number one culprit of they haven't hit many, and unfortunately they've taken a step back because they still have the pitching factory and they just churn out guys left and right. It's not ever really rebuilding. They just retool. JD Thompson's going to step into the Friday role. Last year, he was great. 74 strikeouts, 18 walks, 4.15 ERA and 52 strikeouts. He had a 2.29 Sierra, which was stellar. Cody Bowker is a guy that they're really high on as he's an incoming transfer from Georgetown. Ethan McIlvain was a monster last year, but he had back issues that kind of stifled his entire year, back half of the year there. He only appeared 11 times, but he had a 3.24 ERA, 29 strikeouts, and 25 innings there. I really love the bullpen. I think there are many great pieces here. Miller Green is a very, very good arm there. As a freshman, he appeared in 20 games, 3.16 ERA, 34 strikeouts, only 8 walks in the 31 innings. Tommy O'Rourke was the closer on the 2022 Stanford College World Series team. He's now a graduate senior. He appeared in 30 games in his last full season, which was back in 2022. He had a 4.41 ERA, 35 strikeouts, 16 walks, and 32.2 innings there. And Sawyer Hawks had arm issues the entire winter, spring, and this year he's back and healthy. And from all due reports, been a really electric arm to start. So he's a senior. Don't know what's going to happen in SEC play, but in 2023 at Air Force, he was dominant. One of their best arms. They pretty much used him all over the place in a bunch of different situations, not necessarily as their top starting pitcher. The offense has its question marks, as it has had for the past couple of seasons, but I did want to mention Brody Johnston, freshman. I mean, this kid is projectable. I mean, this is a physical shortstop recruit. He's sliding over to third base because Jonathan Vastine is one of the best defensive shortstops in the SEC. Brody Johnston is going to be a big-time hitter for this team, and they bring in Mike Mancini, and they have Chris Maldonado, who's going to be healthy for this upcoming year. That's your pop. Hopefully it carries the day for the Commodores here. Johnny, what are your thoughts on Vanderbilt? Because I feel like people are all over the place on Vandy.
Vandy, the blue blood of college baseball. Tim Corbin is the Bill Belichick of the sport, the royalty. Listen, Vanderbilt in the NIL world the last few years has suffered a little bit because they always had the shiny hardware to attract the young talent and bring these kids in. And now with NIL, it's kind of really leveled the field. But listen, I think Vanderbilt's going to be middle of the pack. I do. I think there's a lot of talent on this team. I think there's a lot of the new guys coming in that I'm excited to see. Chris Maldonado is actually an alumni of my high school. He's probably like 10 years younger than me. But his older brother, who played at Pitt, I knew really well as well. Maldonado was so clutch a couple of years ago before his injury. He got hurt last year. He only played 5 games, but 2023, batted .310. He was so clutch, came up with so many big hits. I expect him to come back strong this year. Maldonado is going to be a big contributor for the Vanderbilt offense. RJ Austin, stud. First round grade, in my opinion, preseason. I think Austin can definitely live up to it. This kid is a freak athlete. He's got pop, even though 4 home runs doesn't exactly evince a lot of power. Vanderbilt a relatively big ballpark. I think RJ Austin's a big contributor. Jonathan Vastine, you said, it's a big-time hitter. Brody Johnston coming in, young player, freshman. Mike Mancini from James Madison. He was a silent killer. It's a guy, because he plays at JMU, doesn't really get the burn, but he's a .330 hitter with 15 bops. You're bringing in a bunch of different transfers. Braden Holcomb, who was there last year. So the hitting, I think, is going to actually be pretty good. It's whether or not this team can cut down on the strikeouts and put the ball in play more. I don't know if they're going to have even one 20 home run guy, but can they have like 3 or 4 guys in the teens and a bunch of solid hitters batting in the 300s? Pitching wise, I am so excited for J.D. Thompson. J.D. Thompson is going to be one of the best pitchers in the country this year. J.D. Thompson is going to be a first rounder this summer. I think Thompson, especially as a lefty, it's going to be really exciting stuff. We saw this kid blossom in real time in the second half of last year. When Vanderbilt was making that tournament push, this guy was called on in the big moments. Tim Corbin handed him the ball. He gave him the keys to the kingdom in the big starts, and all this kid did was deliver. I love me some J.D. Thompson. Honestly, I wrote up a mock with the Baltimore Orioles having 3 picks and needing a pitcher. If J.D. Thompson's still there at 19, I love him to go to the Orioles. So him heading the rotation is big. Cody Bowker, coming in from Georgetown, if he can kind of just be solid and command that Saturday role, that's obviously going to be big. Ethan McElvain, remember when Chris McElvain was the Friday guy, his big brother a few years ago. But the bullpen is going to be the strength of this team. Miller Green is huge, going to be a high leverage guy. I think Vanderbilt's got a lot of juice this year. I have them in the middle of the pack just because the other teams' rosters, I think, are better and they have a lot more questions answered. But considering the coach in Tim Corbin, I think Vandy's going to be very competitive. They only won 13 games in the SEC last year. I think 16, 17 is probably more their realm. They kick it off with Auburn. Then they have A&M, Arkansas. That's a tough 3-game series or 3 series to open up. Florida is the 4th. Oklahoma is the 5th. Georgia as the 6th. That's a brutal gauntlet. That's why I have them about 9th right now. Then second half at Ole Miss, home to Bama, Tennessee, and they close it out with Kentucky. That's where it could come back to hurt Vanderbilt is their really hard first half of conference schedule.
Yeah, and I mean, we see Tim Corbin in this offseason fired a couple of his longtime assistants, went out and got Jason King, who was the Dayton head coach, and then Ty Blankmeyer. Johnny, I think you were telling me about this guy from your area, but both of these two are supposed to be very important pieces to this season. We'll see what happens. It's a pivotal year in Nashville because there were some fans that, frankly, I don't think they know how good they've had it the last 2 decades, but there's some unrest, I would say, in Nashville.
All right. Well, look, those are all of our teams. Let's get to our rankings. Once again, the ACC preview is already out. If you followed that one, you'll know that we're going to rank these things really quickly here.
Yeah, because we've already taken forever, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So you want to rip them, Johnny? Do you have yours ready?
Yeah. All right. Let me rip them real quick. 16 Mizzou, 15 Ole Miss, 14 Auburn, 13 South Carolina, 12 Mississippi State, 11 Kentucky, 10 Alabama, 9 Vandy, 8 Oklahoma, 7 Texas, 6 Florida, 5 Arkansas, 4 UGA, 3 Tennessee, 2 LSU, 1 Texas A&M.
For me, my SEC preseason rankings go as follows: Missouri at 16, Ole Miss at 15. I'm going to get flamed for this, but I have Kentucky at 14. I had really hard time ranking these next 4. I basically did it on who had the highest ceiling. I don't think Kentucky's ceiling is super high this year. So if they once again finish in the top 5, go ahead, roast me for it. But Kentucky 14, Auburn 13, South Carolina 12, and Alabama 11 in that bunched up group for me. Mississippi State at 10. 9, I have Oklahoma. Vanderbilt, I have at 8. 7, Florida. 6, Georgia. 5, Texas. 4, Tennessee. 3, LSU. 2, Arkansas. And 1, Texas A&M. Colby, how about you?
8 or 16. Most conferences are 18. 16, Missouri. 15, Ole Miss. 14, Auburn. 13, Bama. 12, Kentucky. 11, Mississippi State. 10, Vandy. 9, South Carolina. 8, Florida. 7, Oklahoma. 6, Georgia. 5, Arkansas. 4, Texas. 3, Tennessee. 2, A&M, and 1, LSU.
Ooh, I like it. I like that top 5 there.
Folks, that's our show. Please give Johnny V a follow on Twitter at _JohnnyVTV. Check out all of his work as well. Noah Bieniek's on Twitter at NoahB77_. Give him a follow. Check out his work as well. I'm on Twitter at TheColbyD. The College Baseball Experience is on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. Follow. Also, YouTube.com/The College Experience. Highly recommend watching the show. Get on over there, hit that like and subscribe button there. Check out all of our other stuff. The College Football Experience, the College Basketball Experience. Every single night, every game, we talk about it on the College Basketball Experience and the College Football Experience, the FCS College Football Experience, and we even hit you with the Frozen Four for some college hockey stuff in March. Check us out. Check out the Sports Gambling Podcast as well. And looking forward to next week already, folks. The season's right around the corner. College baseball is here. This is the College Baseball Experience. You better start thinking about yours. And we out of here. Run and shoot.